worried about is I'll turn out like Roderick, Manny will turn out like me, and eventually we'll all turn out like Bill.
Rock and roll! Rock on! Yeah!
Wednesday. I thought things couldn't get any worse when Mom told Roderick he had to start paying rent if he wanted to keep practicing with loaded diaper in our basement. I figured that would be the end of the band, seeing as Roderick's life savings consists of 3/4, a paperclip, and a faded Chuck E. Cheese token. But I underestimated Roderick. Instead of paying rent, he somehow convinced Mom that his lead singer, Bill Walter, was a musical tutor and therefore doing us a public educational service by hanging around. So now Bill is basically living in our basement. For a guy who was a 35-year-old high school dropout, he sure makes himself right at home. Yesterday, I caught him using my limited edition Twisted Wizard toothbrush to comb his sideburns. When I yelled at him, he just stared at me with half-open eyes and said, "Relax, little dude, germs are just a corporate myth." The worst part about having Bill around isn't the smell, though it's a tight race between old gym socks and expired Funyuns. It's how he influences Roderick. Roderick thinks Bill is a total genius. Whenever Dad tells Roderick to take out the trash, Bill chimes in from the couch with something deep like, "The man wants to bag your spirit, Roderick. Let the garbage be free." And then Roderick leaves a half-eaten burrito on the coffee table as a form of protest. Mom is completely losing her mind. She tried setting up a chore chart for Bill, but he just used her gold star stickers to cover up a hole in his leather jacket. I overheard her talking to Dad in the kitchen last night, pacing back and forth with a spatula like a weapon. Honestly, her panic kinda makes sense. She was practically hyperventilating. I wrote it down in my journal because it perfectly sums up the panic in this house right now. I realized that Mom's biggest fear is I will turn out like Roderick, and Manny will turn out like me, and eventually we will all turn out like Bill. I mean, I get where she's coming from, but I draw the line at eating cereal out of a Frisbee, which is exactly what Bill was doing this morning because he was too lazy to wash a bowl. The real disaster happened when Manny woke up. Manny is Mom's little angel, but he's also highly impressionable. Bill was sleeping on the living room rug, and Manny waddled over, stared at him for 5 minutes, and then started demanding we call him Loaded Manny. By lunchtime, Manny refused to eat his apple slices unless they were shredded like a guitar solo. Mom almost had a complete meltdown when Manny walked into the kitchen wearing nothing but a temporary tattoo on his forehead and a bandana, yelling, "Rock and roll is my breakfast." Finally, Dad had to step in. He marched into the living room and told Bill if he wanted to stay, he had to get a real job by 5 p.m. Bill looked at Dad like he had just spoken a foreign language, muttered something about the suffocating weight of suburban capitalism, and wandered out the front door carrying a family-sized bag of our Doritos. I'm pretty sure he just relocated to the back of his rusty van in our driveway. So now we still have Bill around, but at least he's an outside pet.
You'd be in tip-top shape, just like Will.
Monday. I've come to a major realization. If there's a zombie apocalypse tomorrow, I'm the first one going down. I was watching this movie where the main guy fights off 50 ninjas with his bare hands, and it really got me thinking. I looked down at my arms, and let's just say they look less like lethal weapons and more like uncooked spaghetti. If I ever had to throw a punch, my wrist would probably shatter into a million pieces. I asked Mom if we could get a membership at the Iron Core Gym downtown. I told her it was an investment in my future survival. She told me I could get plenty of exercise by pulling weeds in the front garden. Obviously, she doesn't understand that you can't build massive biceps by aggressively tugging on dandelions. So I had to take matters into my own hands. I decided to start a home bodybuilding program. The first step was finding heavy objects to lift. Manny's toy box was mostly plastic blocks, and Dad's tool shed was padlocked because of the incident where Roderick tried to build a homemade flamethrower. I ended up using 2-gallon jugs of milk from the fridge as dumbbells. I managed to do exactly 3 reps before my fingers went completely numb from the cold. Plus, Mom yelled at me because I accidentally shook one of the jugs so hard it basically churned into butter. Tuesday. Turns out building muscle requires more than just lifting heavy dairy products. You need protein. I read online that real bodybuilders drink these huge, awful-tasting protein shakes to get bulky. We didn't have any actual protein powder in the house, so I had to improvise using what we had in the pantry and the fridge. I put a raw egg, a slice of leftover meatloaf, 3 hefty scoops of chunky peanut butter, and a splash of pickle juice. The pickle juice was just for flavor, but the final product looked exactly like toxic sludge from a comic book. Roderick walked into the kitchen right as I was chugging it. He stopped, stared at the blender, and asked if I was finally putting myself out of my misery. I wiped my mouth and told him I was getting ripped. I told him to prepare himself for the new, highly intimidating Greg. He just laughed and told me to flex. I flexed as hard as I could. I actually squeezed my eyes shut and held my breath until I saw little black spots swimming in my vision. When I opened my eyes, Roderick tapped my bicep with his drumstick and said, "Careful, don't pop the bubble wrap." 10 minutes later, the meatloaf pickle shake hit my stomach like a cinder block, and I spent the next 2 hours barricaded in the upstairs bathroom. So much for the gains. Wednesday. I decided to focus entirely on upper body strength today, so I could at least look intimidating at school. I wore a tight t-shirt to accentuate my chest, even though it mostly just accentuated my collarbones. During PE, Mr. Underwood announced we were doing the rope climb. Usually I just hang at the bottom of the rope and pretend my shoes are tied tightly together, but today I was fueled by pure, unadulterated bodybuilding ambition. This was my moment to show everyone my raw power. I grabbed the rope, gave a mighty grunt that sounded exactly like a goose honking, and pulled with all my might. I made it exactly 4 inches off the mat before my arms decided they were going on strike. I hung there, vibrating violently for about 10 seconds. The worst part was that Raleigh was next in line, and when it was his turn, he practically floated to the top of the gym. He yelled down that it's because he's been carrying around his dad's golf clubs all summer. I dropped back to the mat in total defeat. I tried to walk away looking tough, but my arms were entirely numb and swinging at my sides like wet noodles. I bumped into the gym doors just trying to push them open. Thursday. I woke up this morning and discovered a brand new level of human suffering. I looked it up and it's called delayed onset muscle soreness. It is completely ruining my life. I physically could not raise my arms above my chest. When I went to the bathroom, I had to brush my teeth by holding the toothbrush completely still in the air and violently shaking my head from side to side. When I finally got downstairs for breakfast, Mom asks why I was eating my cereal like a T-Rex. I tried to explain that I was a bodybuilder in recovery and that my pectoral muscles were repairing themselves, but she just sighed, slid a piece of paper across the table, and said I signed me up for the school's chess club. I've officially retired from the iron game. I've realized that being wimpy is actually an evolutionary advantage. Think about it. If a bear attacks a group of people, it's going to go for the guy with the most meat on his bones. Roderick is a much better snack than me anyway. I'm just gonna stick to video games. At least the only thing getting cramped there are my thumbs, and I don't have to drink blended meatloaf to get a high score.
Puppy did it. Puppy did it. Puppy did it.
Greg!
Thursday. I am officially convinced that Manny is a criminal mastermind, and I'm the one serving his life sentence. For the past week, Mom has been reading this new parenting book called Listening to Your Toddler's Truth. Basically, the book says that kids Manny's age never lie, and if they say something happened, you have to take their word as absolute fact. Manny must have secretly read The Dust Jacket because he has weaponized this information against me. His new favorite phrase is, "Bubby did it." It started small. This morning, I walked downstairs for breakfast and found Mom staring in horror at the living room wall. Somebody had used a thick, permanent black Sharpie to draw what looked like a cross between a deformed duck and a monster truck right above the sofa. Manny was standing exactly 2 feet away. He was holding the uncapped Sharpie. His hands were completely stained black, and he had a smudge of ink on his nose. Mom gasped and looked at Manny. "Manny, what happened here?" Manny didn't even blink. He slowly raised one ink-stained finger, pointed directly at me as I stood in the doorway holding a bowl of cereal, and said, "Bubby did it." Mom slowly turned to me, her eyes narrowing. I tried to explain that I had literally just woken up and that my hands were completely clean, but Mom held up a hand. She told me that defacing property is a sign of unexpressed teen angst and grounded me from television for the rest of the week. Manny just sat there, sucking his thumb and smiling at me around the edges of it. Friday. I realized today that I am dealing with a supervillain, and I need to start treating my house like an active war zone. I spent all afternoon hiding in my room, figuring that if I wasn't in the same time zone as Manny, I couldn't be blamed for anything. I was just settling in to play some video games when I heard a horrific gurgling sound coming from the upstairs bathroom. It sounded like a swamp monster was trying to digest a tractor. A few seconds later, water started seeping under my bedroom door. Dad came running up the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. We both pushed the bathroom door open. The toilet was overflowing and the water was neon pink. Floating in the toilet bowl, along with what looked like an entire disintegrated roll of toilet paper, was Dad's expensive electric shaving razor and a mostly melted block of Manny's kinetic sand. Manny was sitting on the bath mat, happily splashing his hands in the pink puddle on the floor tiles. Dad looked like he was about to blow a gasket. "Who flushed sand down the toilet?" he yelled, grabbing his ruined razor out of the bowl. Manny looked up, gave Dad a sad, innocent pout, pointed a dripping pink finger at me, and squeaked, "Bubby did it." Dad didn't even let me speak. He confiscated my game console on the spot and told me I was spending my Saturday snaking the plumbing. I tried to argue that I don't even know what kinetic sand is, but Dad just muttered something about me needing to take responsibility for my destructive impulses. Saturday. I woke up today knowing I had to set up a sting operation. If nobody in this house was going to believe logic, reason, or basic forensic evidence, I needed raw video footage. I fully charged my phone and hid behind the kitchen island, waiting for Manny to strike. I didn't have to wait long. At exactly 10 a.m., Manny waddled into the kitchen. He was carrying a carton of eggs and a large container of Mom's expensive crafting glitter. I hit record on my phone. Finally, I thought, I've got him. Manny proceeded to systematically drop eggs one by one onto the pristine white kitchen rug. Splat, splat, splat. Then he unscrewed the glitter jar and dumped the entire thing over the slimy yolk puddle, creating a sparkly yellow biohazard zone. Just as I was about to jump up and scream, "Aha!" my phone screen went blank. The storage was completely full because I forgot to delete all my blooper videos from last month. At that exact moment, Mom walked in holding a laundry basket. She dropped the basket. The thud made Manny jump. He looked at the mess, then looked at me crouching behind the island with a dead phone. He didn't even miss a beat. He made a "ha" sound and pointed at me and said, "Bubby did it." I tried to show Mom the video, but since the phone was dead, I just looked like a maniac hiding behind the counter for no reason. Mom made me scrub the egg out of the rug with my own toothbrush, while Manny sat in his high chair eating Cheerios, tossing one at the back of my head every time Mom looked away. Sunday. By Sunday morning, I had completely given up. I accepted my fate. I was going to spend the rest of my life taking the fall for a 3-foot-tall tyrant. I decided the only safe place for me was sitting completely still in the backyard. But when I came downstairs, the house was dead silent. I walked into the kitchen and found Dad standing frozen in front of the open dishwasher. He was hyperventilating. I peeked inside. Someone had loaded Dad's prized vintage classic rock vinyl records into the bottom rack and ran them on the heavy-duty pots and pans cycle. They were warped into wavy, unplayable plastic taco shells. Manny was standing right there, holding a bottle of dish soap. He pointed at me and said, "Bubby did it." Dad turned to me, his face completely red. He opened his mouth to scream, but then he stopped. He looked at the dishwasher, he looked at the records, then he looked at me. "Wait a minute," Dad said, squinting. "Greg doesn't know how to load the dishwasher. He thinks the dishes magically clean themselves. He doesn't even know where we keep the detergent." I have never been happier to have a reputation for being incredibly lazy. Dad slowly turned his gaze down at Manny. Manny realized his tactical error. He dropped the dish soap and tried to make a run for the living room, but Dad scooped him up. For the first time all week, the listening to your toddler's truth rule went out the window. I was finally cleared of all charges. Of course, Dad still made me help empty the ruined records out of the dishwasher because I should have been watching my brother, but at least I got my game console back. Thursday. I've realized that being perfectly healthy is actually a massive disadvantage in middle school. While I'm out here doing the presidential fitness test and carrying my own heavy backpack around like a chump, guys with injuries are living like absolute royalty. Take Albert Sandy. He jammed his pinky finger playing dodgeball, and suddenly the teachers are treating him like he just returned from a war. He gets to use the staff elevator, leaves class 5 minutes early to avoid the rush, and gets a free pass on the pull-up bar. So last night I decided I needed a medical emergency. Nothing major, just a severe, highly visible, completely fake bone fracture. I figured a broken forearm was the sweet spot. It guarantees you a solid month of people carrying your lunch tray, and you don't have to limp. Friday. I spent 3 hours locked in the bathroom creating a masterpiece. It turns out you can make a highly realistic orthopedic cast using 3 rolls of toilet paper, half a bottle of school glue, and a whole lot of flour. I even drew a bunch of fake signatures on it with my left hand to make it look authentic. When I got to school, the plan worked perfectly. I walked through the hallways, cradling my arm, and people parted for me like the Red Sea. I even got out of writing my history essay because the teacher said I needed to rest my radius bone. The only problem was Rowley. He saw all the attention I was getting and got totally jealous. I told him he couldn't copy my broken arm idea, but Rowley never knows how to play it cool. Monday. I knew I was in trouble the second Rowley waddled off the school bus this morning. Instead of faking a normal injury, he showed up wearing a full-body brace made out of Amazon boxes, duct tape, and what looked like a pair of inflatable pool floaties. He loudly announced to the entire cafeteria that he fell down a very tall escalator, but his suit was so stiff he couldn't even bend his knees to sit at the lunch table. The teachers were so panicked they almost called an ambulance right then and there. I had to spend my entire lunch period trying to convince the school nurse that Rowley just had temporary cardboard paralysis and that a hospital trip wasn't covered by his insurance. It was exhausting. Tuesday. Well, the free ride is officially over. Today, during third period, the alarm went off. Usually, a fire drill is the best part of the school day, but today there was a torrential downpour outside. As we stood in the school parking lot for 20 minutes, my beautiful flour and toilet paper cast started to dissolve. By the time the principal gave the all clear, my broken arm looked like a soggy bowl of oatmeal dripping onto my sneakers. To make matters worse, Rowley's cardboard body cast completely caved in from the rain, leaving him trapped inside a soggy, collapsing brown box in the middle of a massive puddle. We both got 3 days of detention for faking medical emergencies, and now our gym teacher is making us do double the pull-ups for the rest of the semester. Tuesday. If there's one thing I've learned about being a middle schooler, it's that the economy is completely rigged against us. The new Twisted Wizard 4, The Wizard Gets Twisted Again expansion pack drops this Friday. It costs $40, which might as well be $1 million when your primary source of income is finding quarters in the couch cushions. I tried to explain to Mom that playing Twisted Wizard is basically an investment in my hand-eye coordination, which will probably lead to a career as a brain surgeon. She didn't buy it. She handed me a mop and told me I could earn $2 by scrubbing the kitchen floor. $2! At that rate, I'll be in college by the time I can afford the expansion pack, and I won't even have time to play it because I'll be too busy failing chemistry. So I realized I needed a business plan, something low effort, high reward. That's when I saw Mrs. Craig struggling to drag her fat beagle down the sidewalk. A light bulb went off. Dog walking. People are incredibly lazy when it comes to their pets, and they will pay top dollar for someone else to pick up the poop. But obviously, I wasn't going to do the actual walking part. That defeats the whole purpose of being an entrepreneur. I needed an employee, someone with boundless energy, no understanding of labor laws, and a whole lot of free time. I needed Raleigh. Wednesday. I pitched the idea to Rolly at lunch. I told him we were starting a premium high-end pet service called VIP Paws. At first, he wasn't into it because he said he's afraid of dogs that are taller than his knees. But then I told him that as the vice president of canine operations, he would get a plastic badge. That sealed the deal. We spent the afternoon making flyers and shoving them in mailboxes around the neighborhood. I made sure to put my phone number on the flyers so I could handle the corporate side of things, negotiating the cash, while Rolly went home to stretch his hamstrings for the field work. It didn't take long for the phone to ring. It was Mr. Jefferson, our neighbor from 3 streets over. He said his dog, Tiny, needed a walk, and he'd pay us $10. $10! I was already a quarter of the way to Twisted Wizard. I called Rolly, told him to meet me at Mr. Jefferson's house, and specifically instructed him to bring the heavy-duty poop bags. When we got there, Mr. Jefferson opened the garage door. That's when I realized the dog wasn't called Tiny because he was small. It was ironic. Tiny was an English Mastiff, the size of a mid-sized sedan. I immediately told Rolly that as vice president, this was a great opportunity for him to show his leadership skills. I handed him the leash, which looked like it was made out of thick boat rope, and backed away slowly. Tiny didn't walk. Tiny explored, and wherever Tiny wanted to explore, Rolly went with him, whether his feet were touching the ground or not. At one point, Tiny saw a squirrel run up an oak tree in the park. Tiny charged. Rolly held onto the leash for dear life, and he actually went flying through the air like a human kite. I sat on a park bench and supervised. I even took a few notes on a clipboard to make it look official. Mostly, I was just calculating how many more times Rolly would have to risk his life for me to afford the expansion pack. 3 more walks and I'd be fighting digital goblins. After an hour of sheer terror for Rolly and a very relaxing nap for me, we brought Tiny back to Mr. Jefferson. Mr. Jefferson came out and handed me a crisp $10 bill. "Good job, boys," he said. I tipped my CEO hat. "Pleasure doing business with you, sir. My associate really worked up a sweat giving Tiny the premium package." Then disaster struck. Tiny sneezed, a massive, horrifying sneeze, and the leash jerked right out of Mr. Jefferson's hand. I don't want to talk about it, but I guess I have to. When Tiny got loose, he bolted straight across the street and into the Fregley's yard. Fregley was outside making a mud pie, and Tiny decided to help. By the time we caught him, the dog was completely covered in thick black mud. Mr. Jefferson was furious. He demanded his $10 back, and then he said we owed him another $20 for the professional dog grooming he was going to have to pay for. So not only did I not make any money for Twisted Wizard 4, I'm now in debt to an angry neighbor. When I got home, Mom asked how my little business was going. I told her the market crashed and I had to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. She just sighed and handed me the mop again. The worst part of all of this is I found out today that Mr. Jefferson actually felt bad for yelling at Rolly because Rolly kept apologizing and telling Tiny he was a good muddy boy. So Mr. Jefferson gave Rolly a $5 tip for having a good attitude. Rolly bought a shiny new yo-yo with the money. He's been doing tricks in my front yard all afternoon. I'm seriously considering charging him a loitering fee, but I know Mom would just make me mop the driveway. Sunday. I've always said that the fastest way to ruin a perfectly good Sunday is to let Dad watch the news before his morning coffee. Usually he just grumbles about the lawn or the neighbor's dog, But today he was all worked up about the geopolitical tensions between the USA and Iran. Personally, I don't see why world leaders can't just settle their differences over a game of Twisted Wizard. It would save everyone a lot of trouble. But Dad started going on this whole rant about national preparedness and being a global citizen, which is usually code for, Greg, I've found a new way to make your life miserable. He decided that since the world is in such a fragile state, the Heffley family needs to be more culturally aware. So instead of going to the movies like we planned, he dragged us to this international friendship fair at the Civic Center. The fair was basically just a bunch of folding tables with saggy posters and food that looked like it had been sitting out since the mid-90s. Dad was determined to find the Middle Eastern section so we could understand the stakes. We finally found a booth with a giant map of Iran, but Roderick immediately ruined the vibe. He started asking the guy running the booth if they have heavy metal scenes in Tehran and if he knew any drummers who could play in Loaded Diaper. The guy looked at Roderick like he was from another planet. I tried to slide away and look at a display of Persian rugs, but Manny was already there and he'd somehow managed to get a sticky lollipop stuck to a silk tapestry that probably cost more than our car. I had to spend 10 minutes shielding Manny with my body so the booth owner wouldn't see him, which made it look like I was doing some kind of weird interpretive dance in front of the Iranian flag. By the time we got to the USA booth, things were even worse. It was just a guy handing out mini American flags and coupons for a local muffler shop. Dad started talking to the guy about defense strategies, and I could tell the muffler guy just wanted to go home and watch the football game. While Dad was busy debating foreign policy with a mechanic, I saw Raleigh wandering around wearing a t-shirt that said, "I love everyone" in 16 different languages. He had a giant plate of kebabs in one hand and a burger in the other, trying to create peace through snacks. He told me he was going to start a letter writing campaign between our school and a school in Iran so we could be pen pals for peace. I told him that might be hard, considering I can barely get him to text me back when I'm standing right outside his house. The whole thing came to a crashing halt when the cultural parade started. Dad insisted we march in it to show our patriotic spirit, but since we didn't have any costumes, he made us wear those plastic ponchos we keep in the trunk for rain emergencies. So there we were, Dad, Roderick, Manny, and me, marching through the Civic Center looking like a pack of oversized blueberries. Raleigh was right behind us, accidentally hitting people with his "I love everyone" sign because he couldn't see past his kebab plate. A news crew actually showed up, and for a second I thought I was going to be famous, but the headline on the evening news just said, "Local family mistaken for loose trash bags at Unity Fair." If this is what global diplomacy is like, I think I'll just stay in my room until I'm 30. At least in my room, the only conflict I have to worry about is Roderick stealing my chocolate milk.
Ah, yes. The life of a pharaoh.
Monday. If you ask me, the worst part of middle school isn't the homework or the cafeteria food. It's the group projects. But today, Mr. Huff introduced a new assignment that actually sounded like it had some potential. He told us that for the next week, we are doing a global summit project. Every student had to choose a famous world leader, past or present, and we have to actually act like them for the entire week. Right away, my brain started spinning. I figured if I picked the right leader, I could basically get out of doing any real work. I raised my hand and asked if we could choose a king who had servants do everything for him, because I was fully prepared to have Rowley carry my backpack between classes. Mr. Huff said we couldn't force other students to be our servants unless they agreed to it, which was fine by me because talking Rowley into stuff is basically my superpower. I decided I was going to be King Tut. The guy was a pharaoh, he had unlimited power, and best of all, he died when he was 19 and got wrapped in bandages. I figured I could just wrap myself in toilet paper, climb into a cardboard box in the back of the room, and take a nap for historical accuracy. But of course, Albert Sandy stole my idea. He didn't even want to be King Tut for the history part. He just wanted an excuse to use the boys' bathroom as a tomb. So I had to scramble. I looked through the textbook and found a guy named King Louis XIV of France. He was called the Sun King and basically just threw massive parties at his giant palace and made everyone watch him eat. Sounded like my kind of guy. I turned around to see who Rowley was picking. I figured he'd choose someone cool like a Viking chieftain or maybe a knight. But Rowley being Rowley, he completely missed the point of the word world. He decided to be the mayor of our town, Mayor Higgins. I tried to tell Rowley that Mayor Higgins isn't exactly on the same level as Julius Caesar or George Washington, but Rowley said he already had the campaign buttons from last year's election and didn't want them to go to waste. Things got way worse when Patty Farrow marched up to the sign-up sheet. Patty picked Genghis Khan, and if you know anything about Genghis Khan, you know this was going to be a disaster for the rest of us. By third period, the classroom had completely fallen apart. Mr. Huff told us we had to stay in character while we did our normal math worksheets, which was a terrible idea. I was sitting at my desk wearing a Burger King crown and a red velvet blanket my mom let me borrow. I was trying to order Fregley, who was dressed as a medieval plague doctor for some reason, to do my fractions, but Fregley was too busy trying to cure my eraser by smacking it with a stick. Then there was Patty. Since she was Genghis Khan, she decided that her empire needed to expand. She started annexing other kids' desks. She walked right up to Chirag Gupta, who was dressed as Mahatma Gandhi, and told him his desk was now part of the Mongol Empire. Chirag tried to peacefully protest by sitting on the floor, but Patty just shoved his desk to the back of the room and put her pencil case on it to claim it. Mr. Huff didn't even stop her. He just sat at his desk, nodding and writing things down on a clipboard, muttering about how historically accurate the classroom dynamics were getting. It didn't take long for Patty to set her sights on my desk. I told her that France was a very powerful nation and that the Sun King doesn't just hand over his territory. But Patty pointed out that historically, Genghis Khan's army had horses and archers, and I had a plastic crown and a blanket from Target. She gave me 3 seconds to surrender. I looked around for allies. I tried to get Rowley to help, hoping Mayor Higgins had some sort of municipal authority. But Rowley was busy walking around the room shaking everyone's hands and asking them to vote for him for a second term in local office. So now I'm officially a conquered territory. Patty took my desk, and I have to sit on an overturned recycling bin near the chalkboard. The worst part is, I tried to tell Mr. Huff that King Louis XIV would never sit on a recycling bin, but he told me that in war, the defeated king loses his privileges, so I spent the rest of the day trying to balance my math worksheet on my knees while Mayor Higgins offered me a campaign sticker. If you ask me, the school system should seriously rethink teaching us about history. It's way too dangerous. Wednesday. Okay, I thought things couldn't get worse, but Mr. Litch, the PE teacher who looks like he eats children, just announced something terrible. The Middle School Fitness Olympics. Everyone has to participate, and it's not just normal fitness. He invented active challenges. I got stuck in the obstacle course. I'm doomed. I can't even run for the bus without needing an inhaler, and I don't even have asthma. It's on Friday. He yelled, "Prepare for battle," while flexing a muscle I didn't know existed. Rowley is excited, of course. He's actually training. He said we need to build our physical fortitude. I said I need to build my avoidance skills. Thursday. I tried training yesterday. Rowley made us do his homemade course of pain in his backyard. It was awful. He put an old tire, a garbage can, and a broomstick on 2 lawn chairs. The broomstick was supposed to be a high jump. I tried jumping it and managed to hook my leg on the stick, collapsing both chairs and face planting directly into a patch of thistles. I was trying to extract myself while Rowley yelled, "Focus on the physical agony." He thought it was motivational. Roderick came outside and laughed hysterically, then filmed the whole thing and posted it online with the caption, "Fitness fail number 1." I hate this school. Friday. The day is here. The whole school is on the field. There's a giant, scary obstacle course set up with mud pits, climbing nets, and tires. Mr. Litch is screaming with a whistle every 30 seconds. I'm at the start line. I feel sick. Rowley won the wacky sack race. He looked ridiculous in a large potato sack, but he was surprisingly fast. I was next for the obstacle course. I looked at the first wall I had to climb and almost cried. Mr. Litch pointed at me and shouted, "Heffley, move it!" I tried to jump onto the wall, but I didn't jump high enough. I just collided with the wall and slid down. I didn't even make it over the first obstacle. I just fell straight into the mud pit immediately after. Everyone laughed. It got worse. After pulling myself out of the mud, covered in brown slime, I had to navigate a series of tires. I got my leg stuck in the third one and had to hobble to the next section wearing it like a giant shoe. Then came the cargo net. I got completely tangled. I was hanging there, wrapped like a mummy in the net, and Mr. Litch refused to help me, yelling, "Improvise, Heffley, adapt." Rowley tried to help, but got yelled at for illegal assistance. It took me 10 minutes just to get loose. I crossed the finish line covered in mud, thistles, and sweat in last place with a time of 19:43. A literal snail beat me. Roderick sent the video of my fall to the whole school. I got a 1 out of 10 for effort from Litch. I hate fitness. I want to live in a bubble. Saturday. If there's one thing I've always known, it's that this planet is way too small for a future global icon like me. I've been telling Rowley for years that if a spaceship ever lands in our neighborhood, I'm volunteering to leave first. Mostly because I'm tired of sharing a bathroom with Roderick, but also because I bet aliens would actually appreciate my gaming skills. Well, tonight might be the night I finally get my kick it out of here. I was looking out my bedroom window around 9 p.m., trying to see if the neighbors left their trampoline out, when I saw a weird, glowing neon green flash descend right into the woods behind my house. My first instinct was to run downstairs and tell Mom, but then I realized Roderick would probably find a way to blame me for breaking the sky. Plus, if it is a UFO, the government is going to want to interview the guy who discovered it. I can already see the headline, "Local middle schooler saves Earth, awarded lifetime supply of Twisted Wizard expansion packs." I called Rowley immediately. The guy was in the middle of brushing his teeth and swallowed his toothpaste because he thought I said alien invasion. I told him to put on his heaviest winter coat for protection and meet me at the tree line in 10 minutes. Sunday. We didn't actually go into the woods last night because Rowley started crying that his winter coat was restricting his defensive maneuvering capabilities. So we waited until this morning. To make sure we didn't get mind-controlled by extraterrestrial gamma rays, I made Rowley wear Mom's metal spaghetti colander lined with 3 layers of aluminum foil. I told it was an interstellar communication helmet, which made him feel important enough to walk in front of me. We walked about 50 yards into the brush before we found it. Nestled right inside a hollow log was a metallic silver cylinder about the size of a toaster. It had blinking purple lights and was emitting a low, rhythmic thumping noise that sounded like Zorblax, bleep, glip, poop. I'm not even kidding. The alien technology was literally saying the word poop. Rowley wanted to run away because he thought the machine was insulting his ancestors, but I knew a golden opportunity when I saw one. This wasn't just space junk. This was my ticket to bypassing high school entirely. I carefully wrapped the artifact in my spare gym shorts and sneaked it into the house. Monday. I spent all Sunday night drafting a contract for when the media outlets inevitably come knocking on my door. I figure I can sell the movie rights to my alien discovery for at least a couple million. Item: requested royalty. Movie rights, 45% of box office plus unlimited popcorn. Action figure line, must make me look taller than Bryce Anderson. Rowley's cut, a signed photo of me. Today at school, I decided to test the waters. I didn't want to show the artifact to just anyone, so during lunch, I leaned over to Chirag Gupta and whispered that I possessed highly classified extraterrestrial weaponry in my backpack. Chirag didn't believe me, obviously, so I unzipped the bag just an inch to let him see the glowing purple lights. Within 5 minutes, word had spread across the entire cafeteria. Even the popular kids were looking over at our table. Bryce Anderson walked by and said it was probably just a broken alarm clock, but I could tell he was totally threatened. Tomorrow is science show and tell in Mr. Huff's class. I'm going to reveal the artifact, get an automatic A+ for the semester, and probably get invited to NASA, Tuesday. I'm writing this from my bedroom where I am currently grounded for the next 3 weeks. Everything went completely sideways during third period. Mr. Huff called me up to the front of the classroom for show and tell. I stood there, gave a very moving speech about the future of humanity, and dramatically pulled the alien pod out of my backpack. The whole class gasped. The purple lights were flashing faster than ever, and the rhythmic Zorblax, bleep, glip, poop sound was getting louder. But right as I went to press the main purple button to show off its advanced laser capabilities, the top part of the cylinder popped off. A giant spring-loaded plastic fist shot out, hitting Mr. Huff straight in the chin, followed by a massive cloud of cheap green glitter. Turns out it wasn't a UFO. It was Roderick's high school science project from 3 years ago called the Automatic Sibling Deterrent. He had stuffed Manny's old broken Potty Pell Bear voice box inside a hollowed-out car battery, wrapped it in tin foil, and rigged it with a tripwire. He had hidden it in the woods to dry because he accidentally spilled a whole bottle of glue on it. So now, instead of getting a Nobel Prize, I have to clean the science lab with a toothbrush for the rest of the month. And the worst part? Rowley won't take off the foil colander because he claims it's the only thing keeping the glitter radiation from infecting his brain. Saturday. If you ever want to see my dad go completely berserk, just wait until something in the house breaks on a weekend. Usually, Mon is the one who comes up with terrible ideas for how to spend our free time, like family charades night, or going to visit Great Aunt Reba in the nursing home because she smells less funny on Saturdays. But today, Dad woke up with a mission. Apparently, the toilet in the basement bathroom has been making a gurgling sound for 3 weeks, and Dad decided today was the day he was going to fix it himself to save $50 on a plumber. I was minding my own business in the living room, trying to beat level 4 on Zombie Scavenger before Mom noticed I was awake and made me clean the garage, when Dad stomped in wearing his work jorts. Dad's work jorts are these denim shorts that are way too short and have paint stains from when we painted the nursery for Manny 5 years ago. Whenever the jorts come out, it means my day is ruined. "Gregory," he said, sounding very serious, "I need an assistant. Get down to the basement. Operation Porcelain Command is a go." I tried to tell him I had homework, which was a mistake, because Dad knows I never do homework until Sunday night at 9:30 p.m. When I got downstairs, Dad had laid out every single tool we own on a tarp. It looked like he was preparing to perform open-heart surgery, not fix a toilet flapper. He held up a wrench the size of my leg. "Okay, your job is crucial, Greg. You need to hold the flashlight steady while I get in the splash zone." I don't know why Dad thinks I'm incapable of holding a flashlight, but apparently it's a skill I haven't mastered. 5 minutes into the operation, my arm was getting tired. "Hold it higher, Greg," Dad yelled from behind the toilet tank. His head was practically inside the wall. "I can't see the flange." I don't know what a flange is, and honestly, I don't want to know. I shifted the light a millimeter to the left. No, too far. Now you're blinding me. Are you doing this on purpose? Just then, Roderick strolled down the stairs. He was eating a bowl of cereal and wearing his headphones, probably listening to his own band's demo tape at full volume. Hey, Mr. Fix-It, sounds like things are going great down here. Dad tried to turn his head to yell at Roderick to get lost, but he was wedged pretty tight between the sink and the toilet. Roderick, if you aren't here to help, go upstairs, Dad grunted. Sure thing, Dad, I'll just help Greg with the lighting. Roderick grabbed my arm and jerked the flashlight so it was pointed directly into Dad's eyes. Dad flinched, and that's when disaster struck. I don't know what knob he turned or what pipe he yanked, but suddenly there was a sound like a jet engine taking off, followed by a massive whoosh. A geyser of freezing cold water shot straight up out of the toilet tank, hitting Dad square in the face. It knocked his glasses crooked and plastered his few remaining hairs to his forehead. He looked like a drowned rat that had just lost a wrestling match with a garden hose. Roderick laughed so hard he dropped his cereal bowl, which shattered on the concrete floor. Dad didn't even scream. He just slowly stood up, dripping wet in his jorts, and pointed a shaky finger at the stairs. I took that as my cue to leave the country. Sunday. You would think that after yesterday's plumbing catastrophe, we'd get to just chill out today. Nope. Dad had to turn off the water to the entire house until a real plumber can come on Monday. That means we can't flush toilets, take showers, or use the sinks. Mom decided that the house smelled too much like tension and damp drywall, so she announced we were having an emergency family outing. I suggested we just go to the mall so I could use a working bathroom, but Mom said we needed something wholesome to reset our spirits. So she drove us 45 minutes out of town to Ye Old Colonial Pioneer Village. It's one of those places where people dress up in wool clothes even though it's 80 degrees out and pretend they don't know what an iPhone is. Dad was in a foul mood because he had to wear his dress pants since his jorts were still soaking wet in the basement. The whole time we walked around, Dad kept criticizing the historical accuracy of the place. Look at that blacksmith, Dad muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. That anvil is clearly from the wrong century, and I'm pretty sure that butter churner has a Phillips head screw in it. Unbelievable. Mom tried to make us participate in the activities. She made me and Roderick try candle dipping. You basically just dip a string in hot wax 500 times until your arm falls off. Roderick accidentally dropped his candle into the wax vat, which made the guy dressed like Ben Franklin really mad. He told us we were disturbing the tranquility of the settlement. But the real problem, as usual, was Manny. Mom wanted a genuine photo of us looking like a happy pioneer family. She found a lady near the gift shop who lets you borrow props for pictures. She tried to put a little coonskin cap on Manny. Manny went completely bonkers. No itchy hat, I'm only 3. He slapped the cap out of Mom's hand. It landed in a muddy puddle near a fake pig pen. Manny started crying so loud that a woman churning butter stopped what she was doing and gave Mom a dirty look. Then Manny spotted a guy playing a wooden flute and decided he wanted it. When the guy wouldn't give it to him, he bit him on the shin. The guy broke character and yelled something that definitely wasn't in the colonial vocabulary. We ended up leaving 2 hours early because the village manager politely asked us to return to the future. On the ride home, Dad was fuming about the historical inaccuracies, Mom was mad that we ruined her wholesome day, and Roderick was asleep. I was just sitting there thinking that tomorrow is Monday, and for the first time in my life, I'm actually looking forward to going to school. At least at school, the toilets flush and nobody tries to make me dip candles. When we pulled into the driveway, there was a plumbing van parked in front of the house. Dad had caved and called them yesterday afternoon behind Mom's back. The bill is going to be huge, which means Dad is going to be on the warpath for at least another week. I think I'll just hide in my room until I'm 30.
Monday. If there's one thing I have learned in middle school, it's that gym teachers have too much free time on their weekends. Whenever Mr. Underwood goes away for a professional development seminar, it just means he's coming back on Monday with a new way to legally torture us. Last month, he went to a conference on historical fitness, and we spent 3 weeks doing lunges while holding giant rocks, because apparently that's how cavemen got ripped. This weekend, he went to something called tactical dodgeball and advanced adolescent warfare. When we walked into the gym today, it looked like a bomb had gone off in a mattress factory. All the tumbling mats were stood up on their sides to create bunkers, and the lights were dimmed low to simulate the fog of war. Mr. Underwood explained that regular dodgeball was for babies. Tactical dodgeball is about stealth, cunning, and survival instincts. I don't have any of those things. My survival instinct is usually just to hide in the bathroom until the period is over, but Mr. Underwood stationed Fregley by the door as a sentry, so that option was out. The most important rule of tactical dodgeball is that if you get hit, you don't just sit on the bench. You have to lie face down on the cold gym floor and play dead until the round is over. I knew right then I needed a plan. I couldn't just rely on my athletic ability, because that tank is currently empty. I needed an elaborate strategy to become invisible. If I could just blend into the background, all the jocks would take each other out, and I could emerge at the end as the lone survivor by doing absolutely nothing. It was the perfect Greg Heffley scheme. Tuesday. My plan for total invisibility hit a snag immediately. I realized the key to tactical dodgeball wasn't speed, it was camouflage. I needed to blend in with the gym environment. I asked Mom if she could take me to the Army surplus store so I could buy a ghillie suit. You know, one of those suits made of fake leaves that snipers wear. I figured if I looked like a swamp monster, nobody would throw a ball at me. But Mom said a ghillie suit was too aggressive and that she didn't want me glorifying combat. She ended up buying me a hunter's safety vest. It's neon orange. It is literally designed to make sure you cannot be missed in a dense forest. I tried to explain to Mom that this was the exact opposite of camouflage, but she said, at least the other children will see you clearly so they don't accidentally run into you. I think Mom misunderstands the fundamental goal of dodgeball. When Roderick saw my neon vest, he about fell off the couch laughing. He told me that if I really wanted to blend in, I should just tape a bunch of old gym socks to my shirt and smell like the locker room. I actually considered it for a second, which shows you how desperate I am. I spent the rest of the night trying to rub dirt on the neon vest to dull the shine, but it just ended up looking like a radioactive construction worker had fallen in a mud puddle. I am doomed. Wednesday. Today was the big day, the start of Operation Human Target. We got into the locker room to change for PE. When I pulled out my mud-stained neon vest, even the kids who usually get picked last were looking at me with pity. But then Rodley walked in. I don't know what goes on in Rodley's house, but sometimes I think his parents are operating on a different frequency than the rest of the planet. Rodley was wearing a brown turtleneck and brown sweatpants, and taped all over his body were actual branches from a pine tree in his backyard. Apparently, Rodley told his dad about tactical dodgeball, and his dad, being a landscaping enthusiast, took it way too seriously. Rodley smelled like a car air freshener. We got into the gym war zone, and Mr. Underwood blew the whistle, and it was pure chaos. My plan to hide was useless. The neon vest acted like a beacon. I wasn't even 5 seconds into the game when a red rubber ball clocked me right in the stomach. It was thrown by Patty Farrell with frightening accuracy. I had to lie face down on the floor smelling the 30-year-old floor wax while balls whizzed over my head. But the craziest thing was Rodley. Because he looked like a walking shrub, he just went and stood next to the potted ficus plant near the bleachers. Nobody noticed him. He just stood there perfectly still, dropping pine needles everywhere. Thursday. I am officially retiring from all tactical sports. The game yesterday ended in no way nobody expected. The jocks had eliminated each other, and there were only 2 kids left. Tyrone Davies, who is basically a grown man with a mustache in 8th grade, and Rodley.
Tyrone was stalking around the mats looking for the last victim. He walked right past the ficus plant. Rodley, who had been standing there for 20 minutes and really needed to sneeze from all the pine sap, suddenly let out a massive achoo! It scared Tyrone so bad he tripped over a mat and fell out of bounds. Mr. Underwood blew the whistle. Rodley won. Rodley Yelfin won tactical dodgeball by dressing like a hedge and sneezing. Mr. Underwood gave Rodley a certificate that said Master of Stealth. Rodley asked if he could frame it for his mom. I decided I needed a permanent way out of PE for the rest of the unit. When I got home, I told Mom I had developed dodgeball elbow from throwing so hard. I sold it really well. I walked around cradling my arm and wincing whenever I had to lift a fork. Mom bought it and took me to the doctor this afternoon. Dr. Garrison looked at my elbow for 4 seconds, moved it back and forth twice, and then looked at Mom. It seems Greg is suffering from acute joystick tendinitis. The only cure is no video games for 2 weeks and plenty of fresh air. Perhaps some light jogging. I hate doctors.
Friday. I've officially decided that the world is conspiring to keep me from becoming a billionaire. We had a career day assembly at school today, which is basically where they herd us into the gym to listen to adults talk about how tired they are. I was planning on using the time to catch up on sleep, but then Mr. Underwood introduced this guy who invented the toaster spoon. It's literally just a spoon that gets hot. He said he made $1 million in his first year. $1 million for a hot spoon. That got me thinking. If a hot spoon can make you rich, I am definitely sitting on a goldmine of ideas. I spent the rest of the assembly sketching out my master plan in my notebook instead of listening to the vice principal talk about responsibility. My big idea is the automatic sock sorter. Basically, you throw all your laundry in a pile and a robotic arm sorts it out. I told Raleigh about it at lunch, and he asked if the robot arm would pinch him. I told him he was missing the big picture. The problem is, I need seed money to build the prototype. I asked Mom for an advance on my allowance, but she said my allowance is contingent on me actually doing chores, which I feel is a very narrow-minded way to view economics. So I had to take matters into my own hands. I remembered I had this old Space Commander Zorg action figure still in the box from when I was 7. I never opened it because Zorg looked like he was having an allergic reaction, but I heard on the news that vintage toys are worth a fortune now. I spent all afternoon looking for it in the basement. I finally found it under a pile of Roderick's old heavy metal magazines. The box was a little dented, but Zorg was still in his plastic prison. I am 99% sure this thing is my ticket to the good life. I'm going to bring it to the comic book store downtown this weekend and sell it. Goodbye, middle school. Hello, private yacht. Saturday. Things have hit a slight snag in the get-rich-quick department. I woke up early, which is unheard of for me on a Saturday, to prep Zorg for the sale. I even used a Q-tip to clean the dust off the plastic window so Zorg's face really popped. I was about to leave when Roderick walked into the kitchen eating a bowl of cereal. He saw the action figure and actually stopped chewing. "Is that Commander Zorg?" he asked. I tried to hide it behind me. "Maybe. What's it to you?" Roderick started laughing so hard he almost choked on a Fruit Loop. He told me that Commander Zorg was part of a recalled batch of toys from 2005 because the paint they used turned green in sunlight. Apparently, it's not rare cool, it's chemically unstable cool. I told him he was just jealous because he doesn't have a business mindset. I wrapped Zorg in a towel just in case the sunlight thing was true and marched down to the comic book store, Heroes and Zeros. The guy behind the counter, a dude named Garth who smells like old cheese and basement, took one look at Zorg and sighed. "I'll give you 50 cents. Store credit." 50 cents? I yelled. "This is a vintage Zorg. It's still in the box."
Garth pointed to a bin near the door. It was overflowing with about 100 Commander Zorgs. Kid, they made 1 billion of these. They gave them away with Happy Meals for 3 years. I used them as doorstops. I walked home in silence. The worst part wasn't the rejection. It was knowing Roderick was going to be smug about it. I decided not to tell him. I told him I decided to hold on to the asset for future appreciation. He just threw a spoon at me. A regular cold one, unfortunately. Sunday. I thought the Zorg saga was over, but I forgot that I live in a house with Manny. I made the mistake of leaving Zorg on the kitchen table while I went to the bathroom. When I came back, the box was ripped open. Manny was sitting on the floor holding Zorg by the legs, and he had completely covered the action figure in Mom's glitter glue. "Zorg is a princess now," Manny said. I freaked out. Even if it was only 50 cents, it was the principle of the thing. I yelled for Mom, but she just did that thing where she sighs really loud and says, "He's only 3, Greg. He's expressing his creativity." Creativity? He turned a galactic warlord into a glittery fairy. Mom made me let Manny keep it because he's bonded with it now. So I had to spend the rest of Sunday watching Manny make Zorg have tea parties with his stuffed animals. It gets worse. We had to go to my grandma's for dinner, and Manny insisted on bringing Princess Zorg. Grandma loves Manny, so naturally she made a huge fuss over the doll. "Oh, what a lovely, sparkling man," she said. Then Manny told Grandma that I gave it to him. "Oh, Gregory," Grandma said, pinching my cheek, "that is so sweet of you to share your toys with your little brother. I'm going to give you an extra slice of pie for being such a good boy." I wanted to correct the record and say I was actually the victim of property theft, but it was chocolate silk pie. I have no integrity. I ate the pie. Monday. I thought I could leave the shame of the weekend behind me, but apparently the universe hates me. I got to school and everything was fine until 3rd period. I opened my backpack to get my math textbook, and something fell out and clattered onto the floor. It was Princess Zorg. Manny must have snuck it in my bag this morning as a gift. Of course, the room was dead silent when it happened. The action figure landed face up. The glitter caught the fluorescent lights of the classroom perfectly. It looked like a disco ball in the shape of a man. Holly Hills was walking by my desk right at that moment. She looked at the floor. She looked at me. "Is that yours?" she asked. My brain scrambled for an excuse. I could have said it was my little brother's. I could have said I found it. But for some reason, my brain decided to go with, "It's an art project," I said. "It's a commentary on society." Holly frowned. "Society is glittery?" "Yes, exactly," I said confidently. She just sort of nodded slowly and walked away. The rest of the day, people kept coming up to me asking if I had any more social commentary to show them. Fregley even asked if he could eat some of the glitter. I ended up throwing Zorg into the trash can in the boys' bathroom during lunch. I'm done with entrepreneurship. I think I'm just going to marry rich. It seems like less work. Tuesday. If there is one thing I have learned in middle school, it is that the universe is actively plotting to destroy my dignity. And today, the universe didn't just plot, it executed a full-scale attack. It all started in 3rd period. We just started the Aquatic Survival Unit in PE, which is basically just a fancy name for let's see how fast we can make the non-athletic kids catch hypothermia. I specifically asked Mom to write me a note saying I have a rare allergy to chlorine or water or physical exertion in general, but Mom said swimming is a life skill and that I need to expand my horizons. So I dragged myself to the locker room. The smell in there is a mixture of damp socks and despair. I opened my gym bag to get my swim trunks, and my heart literally stopped. The bag was empty. Then I remembered. Last night, I used my gym bag to transport a bunch of comic books to Rally's house because his mom banned violent literature, and I forgot to put my swim gear back in. I had two choices: tell Mr. Underwood I forgot my gear and get a detention, or use the loaner bin. I chose the loaner bin. This was a critical tactical error. Mr. Underwood pointed to a cardboard box in the corner that looked like it hadn't been touched since the 1990s. He said, "Grab a suit, Heffley, and make it snappy." I dug through the box. Most of the swim trunks were either size XXXL or looked like they had been chewed on by a shark. I finally found a pair that looked remotely my size. The only problem was the design. They were bright neon orange. And I don't mean traffic cone orange, I mean radioactive tangerine orange. And written across the back in bold, peeling letters was the word lifeguard. I put them on. They were so tight, I was pretty sure I lost circulation to my ankles immediately. I walked out to the pool deck, trying to cover the word lifeguard with my hands, but it's hard to walk naturally when your hands are glued to your butt. Of course, the first person I saw was Rowley. Rowley was wearing his goggles, but he had them on so tight that his eyes were bulging out like a goldfish. "Zoo-wee mama!" Rowley yelled, pointing at my trunks. "I didn't know you got a job, Greg." "Shut up," I hissed. "It's loaner gear." Mr. Underwood blew his whistle. "All right, maggots, in the water. 10 laps." I jumped in. The water was approximately -40 degrees. I'm pretty sure my soul left my body for a second. Because of my neon orange trunks, I was basically a glowing beacon in the water. I couldn't hide. Every time I stopped to gasp for air, which was every 4 feet, Mr. Underwood would yell, "Keep moving, lifeguard! Don't save anyone, just save yourself." It gets worse. About halfway through the lap, I felt something weird. The loaner trunks had a drawstring, but the string was frayed. As I pushed off the wall for my second lap, the knot came undone. I panicked. I stopped swimming and grabbed my waistband with both hands. "Heffley!" Mr. Underwood screamed. "Why are you stopping? Are you drowning?" "No," I yelled back. "I'm having a technical malfunction." Mr. Underwood didn't care about technical malfunctions. He blew the whistle again. "Relay race, pair up." Of all the people to pair up with, I got stuck with Fregley. Fregley was already in the water, vibrating. He looked at me and said, "I have a scab that floats." I wanted to dissolve into the chlorine right then and there. The race started. I had to hold on to Fregley's ankles while he pulled us, which is a sentence I never thought I'd have to write. But because I was using both hands to hold my pants up, I couldn't grab his ankles, so I had to improvise. I sort of clamped my legs around Fregley's waist and just floated there like a backpack while he dog paddled. It looked ridiculous. The whole class was laughing at me. Even the kid who eats glue was laughing at me. We finished last, dead last. Fregley high-fived me, but his hand was wet and slimy, and I think he transferred a wart to me. The whistle blew for the end of class. Thank God. I scrambled out of the pool, clutching my neon orange nightmare shorts, and ran for the showers. I took the longest shower of my life, trying to scrub the Fregley off of me. But then disaster struck for the second time today. I realized I didn't have a towel because obviously that was in the gym bag I left at home. I looked around. The locker room was emptying out. I was shivering. Then I saw it. Roderick's old towel was sitting on the bench. He must have left it there after high school practice this morning. I grabbed it. It was better than nothing. I dried off and got dressed. When I got home, Mom was waiting in the kitchen. "How was swimming, sweetie? Did you feel invigorated?" I felt a lot of things. Invigorated wasn't one of them. I went upstairs to look in the mirror. That's when I saw it. Roderick's towel wasn't clean. It was a cheap towel. The blue dye from the towel had transferred onto my skin. I am currently completely blue. I look like a Smurf who gave up on life. I have school tomorrow. I think I'm going to fake a fever. Or maybe I'll just move to Alaska and live in an igloo. At least there's no pool there. Wednesday. I read an article in a magazine at the dentist's office today that said, "Scent is the strongest link to memory." Basically, if you want a girl to remember you forever, you need to have a signature scent. That way, every time she smells something specific, like lavender or fresh rain, she'll instantly think of you and fall in love.
I realized this is exactly where I've been going wrong with Holly Hills. I don't have a smell. Well, usually I smell like laundry detergent, or if I've been at Raleigh's house, I smell like whatever weird soup his mom is boiling. So I decided to take action. I went to the drugstore, but the actual cologne was locked behind a glass case, and I didn't want to ask the lady with the mustache to unlock it for me. I went to the clearance aisle instead and found a bottle called Viking Sweat. The bottle was shaped like a battle axe, and it was 75% off. The label said it contains real pheromones. I don't know what a pheromone is, but it sounds scientific, so I bought it. I did a test spray in my room. It smelled intense, kind of like a mix of old gym socks and a pine tree that's on fire. Roderick walked past my door, sniffed the air, and asked if a raccoon had died in the vents. I took that as a sign of jealousy. He knows I'm about to become the alpha male of the house. Thursday. I made a critical error this morning. The bottle said apply generously, so I did. I sprayed it on my neck, my wrists, my shirt, and just to be safe, I did a few pumps into my backpack. When I walked into the kitchen, Mom stopped mid-chew on her toast. "Gregory," she choked, "why do you smell like a chemical spill?" "It's musk," I said, grabbing a Pop-Tart. "It's for men." Dad just opened the window without saying a word. The real trouble started on the bus. It was raining, so all the windows were up. As soon as I sat down, the Viking sweat started to mix with the humidity. The smell got heavier. Raleigh sat next to me and pulled his shirt over his nose. "You smell like the zoo," he muffled through the fabric. "It's called establishing a presence, Raleigh," I told him. By the third stop, the bus driver, Mr. Phillips, pulled over and stood up and announced, "All right, who brought the paint thinner? I can't drive with these fumes." Everyone started looking around. I just stared straight ahead. I was sweating now, which I think activated the pheromones even more. The kid in the seat behind me actually started gagging. Friday. I thought the smell would have worn off by now, but Viking sweat has the half-life of nuclear waste. I tried to scrub it off in the shower this morning, but water just seems to make it angry. It turned from burning pine to wet dog dipped in vinegar. I went to school anyway, hoping no one would notice. First period was history. Mrs. Norton stopped lecturing about the Civil War and started sniffing the air. "Is something burning?" she asked. She actually went to the hallway to check the fire alarm panel. But the worst part was gym. We were playing dodgeball. Usually I'm a prime target, but today nobody wanted to get near me. It was like I had a force field of stink. If someone got within 10 feet of me, their eyes would start watering and they'd have to back off. I was the last one standing because the other team refused to cross the center line. I technically won the game for my team, but nobody high-fived me. Frankly, of course, was the only one who didn't mind. He cornered me by the water fountain and took a deep breath. "You smell like my uncle's basement," he chirped. "Do you want to see my rash?" I hid in the library for the rest of the day. Saturday. I am officially banned from the living room until I decontaminate. Mom made me put all my clothes in a trash bag and leave them on the porch. She said she's not risking the washing machine. I've been scrubbing my skin with lemon juice and baking soda because the internet said that neutralizes odors. It didn't work. Now I just smell like a sour cookie. Dad came home from the hardware store with a can of industrial odor eliminator. It's the stuff they use in crime scenes. He sprayed my room, but now my room smells like Viking sweat mixed with hospital bleach. It's actually worse. I checked the bottle of cologne again to see if there was an antidote listed on the back. That's when I read the fine print at the bottom. Warning, not for use on human skin. Ideal for repelling bears and large rodents. I didn't buy cologne. I bought animal repellent. On the bright side, we haven't seen a single spider in the house for 3 days, but I don't think Holly Hills is going to be impressed that I smell like I'm trying to keep bears away from a campsite. I'm currently sitting in the backyard, letting the wind air me out. A stray cat walked by, sniffed me, and hissed. I think I'm going to stay single for a while. Sunday.
I knew today was going to be a disaster the second Mom walked into my room at 7 a.m. blowing a whistle. Usually, Sunday is the day I reserve for deep rest, which is basically me lying on the couch with a bowl of cereal until my muscles atrophy. But apparently, Mom read an article in Family Blossom magazine about how modern families are sedentary statues, and she decided the Heffleys needed a lifestyle overhaul. Her big idea was the Heffley Family Step-Off. She went out and bought these cheap knockoff activity trackers called Step-O-Meters from the dollar store. The deal is whoever gets the most steps by Wednesday night wins a get-out-of-jail-free card, which can be used to skip any chore. I need that card. Badly. Dad has been threatening to make me clean the gutters, and I'm pretty sure that's how 90% of horror movies start. The problem is, I'm not built for speed. I'm built for comfort. I put the watch on and did a lap around the kitchen island. I checked the screen. It said I had taken 3 steps. I did the math. To win this thing, I'd have to basically walk to Russia. I tried to explain to Mom that I'm conserving my energy for a growth spurt, but she wasn't hearing it. She was already marching in place while making pancakes. I went to the basement to figure out a loophole. I tried shaking my wrist really fast, but after 2 minutes, my arm felt like it was going to fall off, and I'd only earned 50 steps. That's when I saw Roderick practicing his drums. Roderick doesn't actually play the drums, he just hits things until they break. But his right foot was stomping on the bass pedal like a jackhammer. A light bulb went on. I waited for Roderick to go to the bathroom, and I duct taped my step-o-meter to the back of his bass drum pedal. When he came back, he practiced for 2 hours. By the time I retrieved the watch, I had walked 14,000 steps without leaving the basement couch. I am a genius. Monday. I thought I was in the clear, but the step-o-meter situation is getting out of hand. When I came down for breakfast, the watch said I had already done 18,000 steps thanks to Roderick's morning rage session. Mom looked at my wrist and frowned. She asked how I managed to walk 8 miles while I was asleep. I told her I suffer from aggressive sleepwalking and that I dreamed I was being chased by wolves. Dad looked up from his newspaper and said, "If you have that much energy, you can walk to school." So that backfired. On the walk to school, I ran into Rowley. I showed him my step count, hoping he'd be impressed. Rowley asked if he could join the competition. I told him it was a Heffley exclusive, mostly because if Rowley got involved, he'd actually try, and he has weirdly strong calf muscles for a kid who plays with action figures. The real trouble started in phys ed. Mr. Underwood made us run laps. I realized that if I actually ran, my numbers would be suspiciously high because I started the day with a marathon under my belt. So I had to run in slow motion to balance out the algorithm. It looked ridiculous. Everyone else was sprinting, and I was moving like an astronaut on the moon. Fregley started chasing me because he wanted to see the cool robot watch, and I had to actually sprint to get away from him. By the time I got home, I was at 25,000 steps. I checked the leaderboard on the fridge. Mom, 8,000. Dad, 400. He forgot to put his on. Roderick, 20. He spent the whole day sleeping. Manny, 12,000. Wait, Manny? I looked over at Manny. He was sitting on the floor eating a glue stick. There is no way that kid walked 12,000 steps. Then I saw it. Mom clipped Manny's tracker onto the collar of Sweetie, the dog. This is totally rigged. Tuesday. I have to escalate. Sweetie the dog is crushing me. Apparently, Sweetie saw a squirrel in the backyard this morning and did about 4,000 steps in 3 minutes. If I'm going to beat a canine, I need more power. Roderick had band practice again, but he caught me trying to tape the watch to his drum kit. He told me if I touched his drums again, he'd tell Mom I broke her vase last year, which was technically true, but I still say the vase was in a dangerous location. So I needed a new engine. I went into the laundry room. The dryer shakes a lot, right? I threw the watch inside a pair of heavy wool socks and tossed it in the dryer on the heavy-duty cycle. I sat there and listened to it go thump, thump, thump. It sounded like the steps of a giant. It was beautiful. After an hour, I took it out. 0 steps. Apparently, spinning in a circle doesn't count as walking. It just counts as getting dizzy. Plus, the watch was now super hot and smelled like fresh linen.
I was desperate. It was the final stretch. I went to my room and looked up at the ceiling fan. It was risky, but desperate times call for desperate measures. I used Scotch tape to secure the watch to one of the fan blades. I turned the fan on low, it wobbled a bit. I turned it to medium, the watch was logging steps like crazy. Then I got greedy. I turned it to high. It was making a terrifying whirring noise, but I checked the app on Mom's phone. I was clocking 50 miles an hour. I decided to leave it on all night. I figured by morning I'd have enough steps to not only skip chores, but maybe retire from physical activity forever. Wednesday. I think I might have to move to another country. At 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound that sounded like a helicopter crashing into a greenhouse. Apparently, Scotch tape isn't strong enough to hold a piece of plastic spinning at 400 RPM. The stepometer had launched off the fan blade. It ricocheted off my dresser, hit the mirror, crack, and then, because my door was open, flew into the hallway. But that wasn't the worst part. Dad was on his way to the bathroom. The stepometer hit him square in the shin. I heard a scream that I didn't think a grown man was capable of making. When Mom turned on the lights, the scene was bad. The watch was smashed open. The final reading on the screen said 99,999 steps. Mom looked at the fan. She looked at the tape residue. She looked at me. Gregory, she said. She used the full name. That's never good. The step-off is officially canceled. Manny was declared the winner by default, even though his steps were earned by a dog. His prize was that he got to watch his cartoon show during dinner. My punishment? Mom says since I clearly have so much energy to generate 100,000 steps, I can help Dad clean the gutters. And because I broke the mirror, I also have to help Roderick load his equipment for his show on Friday. I'm currently writing this from the roof. If I fall off, tell Rowley he can have my video games. But not the good ones.
Thursday. I've always said that school is basically a prison, but today Vice Principal Roy made it official. They called a surprise assembly in the gym, which usually means someone pulled the fire alarm or Fregley ate something he found in the chemistry lab again. But nope, we had to sit on the floor for 45 minutes while Mr. Roy talked about mental wellness. Apparently, the school district thinks the reason our test scores are in the toilet is because we spend too much time playing Twisted Wizard. So Mr. Roy announced the Great Plainview Middle School Digital Detox. Starting tomorrow, if you can go 48 hours without looking at a single screen, you get a gold tier reward. I leaned over to Rowley and told him the reward is probably a coupon for a free hug or something, but Rowley was actually excited. He said, "Gee, Greg, my dad says technology is eroding the moral fabric of society." I told Rowley to stop quoting his dad because it creeps me out. The real problem isn't the school, it's Mom. Mom is the district PTA vice president, which means she knew about this stupid detox weeks ago. When I got home, the TV power cord was already missing. "Surprise," Mom said, standing in the living room holding a stack of boxes. "Since we're going unplugged, I bought us some vintage entertainment." She held up a board game called Tax Audit, the Game of Fiscal Responsibility from 1974. I tried to tell her that I have a ton of homework that requires the internet, but Mom was one step ahead. She pulled out the encyclopedia set she bought at a yard sale. "If you need to know the capital of Peru, you can look it up in Volume P," she said. I checked Volume P. According to this book, the president is still a guy who died in 1982. This is going to be a long weekend. Friday. I realized that if I'm going to survive this weekend without losing my mind, I need a loophole. I figured that technically I can't look at a screen, but the rules didn't say anything about me watching someone else play a video game or me directing a video game in real life. So I invited Rowley over. I told him we were going to play Augmented Reality Twisted Wizard. I took a cereal box, cut 2 eye holes in it, and drew a health bar on the inside with a red marker. I taped it to Rowley's head. "I can't see anything, Greg," Rowley said. "That's because the graphics are loading. You are the avatar. I am the controller. Go forward." I steered Rowley into the kitchen. My plan was to make him do my chores while thinking he was completing a quest. "Okay, Rowley, to unlock the Dungeon of Doom, you have to scrub this crusty pan until it shines. It's a grinding minigame." Rowley was actually doing it too. He was scrubbing away, making swoosh noises with his mouth. But then Roderick walked in. Roderick isn't doing the detox because he told Mom he needs his phone for banned emergencies. Roderick saw Rowley with a cereal box taped to his head scrubbing a lasagna pan and took a picture immediately. "Nice VR headset, nerd. Does it have surround sound?" Then he walked up behind Rowley and banged 2 pot lids right next to his ears. Rowley screamed and dropped the pan on his foot, and Mom came running in. She saw the cereal box and got all misty-eyed. "Oh, Greg, you're using your imagination to create costumes. This is exactly what the detox is about." She took the cereal box off Rowley's head and said she was going to post about it on her blog. I didn't have the heart to tell her she was using a screen to brag about us not using screens. Saturday. Today was a disaster. Dad decided since we weren't watching TV, we should do some male bonding in the yard. In Dad's language, bonding means holding a flashlight while he yells at a piece of machinery. He wanted to fix the sprinklers. I tried to get out of it by saying I felt sick, but Manny ratted me out. Manny has his own iPad, by the way. Mom says he's exempt from the detox because educational apps assist his cognitive development. So while Manny sat in the air conditioning watching a cartoon about a talking screwdriver, I was out in the heat digging a hole in the lawn. After 2 hours, Dad hit a pipe. Water shot up like a geyser and hit Mrs. Canfield's cat, which was sitting on the fence. The cat screeched and jumped onto Dad's back. Dad started running around the yard trying to shake the cat off, and he tripped over the hole I dug. The worst part is I wished I had my phone, not to call for help, but because if I had recorded that, I would have gone viral and been rich enough to move out. Later, Rowley came back over. He said he wanted to play the tax audit game. I was so bored I actually said yes. It turns out Rowley is really good at tax law. He beat me in 3 turns because he had a diversified portfolio, and I went to jail for embezzlement. "I love this game," Rowley said. "I want to be an actuary when I grow up." I looked at Rowley. He was wearing a shirt that said, "Mommy's Little Math Whiz." I realized that even without video games, Rowley is still the biggest dork I know. Sunday. The detox ended at noon today. I was the first one back at school on Monday morning to claim my prize. I figured since I dug a hole, scrubbed a pan vicariously, and played a board game about taxes, I deserved the gold tier reward. Mr. Roy was standing by the cafeteria with a box of prizes. "Name?" he asked. "Greg Heffley, and I feel mentally wellnessed. Give me the loot." Mr. Roy checked his list. Yes, congratulations on participating." He reached into the box and handed me a pencil. But not just any pencil, it was a pencil that said, "I survived the digital detox," printed on the side. "Where's the gold tier reward?" I asked. "That is the reward. The gold refers to the color of the pencil." I was about to snap the pencil in half, but then I saw Fregley. Fregley clearly had not unplugged. His eyes were red bloodshot and he was vibrating. He walked up to Mr. Roy. "I saw the time elves. They live in the pixels." Mr. Roy handed Fregley a pencil. Fregley immediately ate the eraser.
I went to my locker and took out my phone. I had 400 texts from Rowley asking for a rematch in tax audit. I turned my phone off. Maybe the pioneers were onto something after all.
Tuesday. I seriously need to stop listening to Roderick. You'd think I would have learned my lesson after the whole fake drum set incident last fall, but apparently my brain refuses to retain important survival information. It all started when Mom came home with a flyer for the Plainview Community Talent Showcase. She had that look in her eye, the one that usually results in me wearing a sweater vest or learning a dead language. "This is a great opportunity for you boys to break out of your shells," she said. "And look, first prize is a $50 gift card." I told Mom I had a rare throat condition that prevented me from being on stage, but she just checked my temperature and handed me a kazoo. A kazoo. "If you can't sing, Greg, you can hum," she said. "It's festive." There is nothing festive about a middle schooler playing a plastic instrument that sounds like a dying mosquito. I knew if I went up there and played Yankee Doodle on a kazoo, my social life would be over before it even really started. That's when Roderick stepped in. He told me he had a foolproof plan to get us disqualified before we even had to perform. "It's called avant-garde performance art," Roderick said, looking way too serious. "We go up there, we do something so weird that they kick us out immediately, but we technically don't quit, so Mom can't be mad." He said all we had to do was dress up in garbage bags and scream random words at the judges. I should have known better, but I was desperate. Wednesday. Roderick spent the whole afternoon rehearsing in the basement, which basically just involved him taping various trash items to his clothes. "The key is confusion, Greg," he told me while taping a crushed soda can to his forehead. "If they understand what we're doing, we fail. We need to be unwatchable." He handed me my costume, a black hefty bag with armholes cut out. It smelled like onions. "What am I supposed to do?" I asked. "You're the symbol of societal decay," Roderick explained. "Just stand there and look like you lost your wallet. When I scream, you throw these." He handed me a bucket of water balloons, but they weren't filled with water, they were filled with glitter. "Glitter is the enemy of organization," Roderick said wisely. "One balloon pops on the judges' table and we're banned from the auditorium for life. Problem solved." I have to admit, it was actually a solid plan. Getting banned meant no kazoo, no embarrassment, and we could go home early and play video games. Mom came downstairs to check on our progress. She saw us wearing garbage bags and holding balloons. "Oh, is this for a recycling skit?" she asked, clapping her hands. "Something like that," Roderick grunted. I went to bed actually feeling good about things. For once, Roderick was using his powers for good, or at least for my good. Thursday. The night of the talent showcase was a disaster from the second we walked in. The backstage area was packed with kids tap dancing and parents tuning violins. We were the only ones wearing garbage bags. A kid named Rowley, not my Rowley, just some other kid who looked exactly like him but with a tuba, asked if we were the janitors. Roderick just growled at him. Finally, the MC announced our act. "Please welcome the Brothers of Destruction." He sounded confused reading the card Roderick wrote. We walked onto the stage. The lights were blinding. I could see Mom in the front row holding up the video camera with a huge smile on her face. Dad was asleep next to her, his mouth wide open. Roderick gave the signal. He stepped up to the microphone and whispered, "The melon is watching." Then he screamed, "Now, Greg!" I reached into my pocket, pulled out the biggest glitter balloon, and hurled it at the judges' table with everything I had. Splap! It hit Mr. Huff, the history teacher, right in the chest. A cloud of gold and purple sparkles exploded everywhere. It covered his glasses, his tie, and his coffee mug. Roderick fell flat on his face and started doing the worm, screaming, "Consumerism!" at the top of his lungs. I stood there, freezing cold in my garbage bag, waiting for the security guard to drag us off stage. I was ready for the booing. I was ready for the detention. But nobody moved. The room was dead silent. Then, slowly, Mr. Huff stood up. He wiped a handful of glitter off his face. He looked at me, then at Roderick flopping on the floor like a fish, and he started clapping. "Brilliant," Mr. Huff shouted, his voice cracking. "A searing critique of modern waste, the juxtaposition of the sparkles and the garbage. It's raw, it's brave. Bravo, boys, bravo." The whole audience started cheering. I guess because Mr. Huff liked it, they thought they were supposed to like it too. Mom was crying tears of joy. She thinks we're artistic geniuses. We didn't get disqualified. We won first place. The prize was the $50 gift card, which turned out to be for So What fabrics, so Roderick just gave it to Mom. But the worst part wasn't winning. After the show, the principal came up to us. "That was powerful stuff, boys. We want you to perform the opening act for the district assembly next Monday. Can you do a 20-minute version?" Roderick looked at me and grinned. "We'd love to." I don't have any more balloons, and I think Roderick actually bruised a rib when he flopped. I am never listening to him again. I guess I should explain the whole fake drum set thing, since that was the moment I officially realized Roderick is a danger to himself and others. It happened last October. Roderick's band, Loaded Diaper, was trying to get a gig at the Crossland High School Fall Dance. The problem was their drummer, Ward, got grounded for trying to dye his hair with permanent marker and couldn't leave his house for 3 weeks. Roderick was panic-stricken. He said the demo tape had to be submitted by Monday or they'd lose their shot at stardom. "I need a drummer, Greg," Roderick shouted, blocking the TV. "Someone with rhythm, someone with soul, someone who will work for free." I told him to ask Rowley, but Roderick said Rowley wasn't edgy enough. "I need you," Roderick said, pointing a drumstick at me. I laughed in his face. "I don't know how to play drums, Roderick. The only thing I know how to play is video games." "That's the beauty of it," Roderick said, his eyes lighting up with a terrible idea. "We're just recording a video. I'll dub the sound of professional drums over the video later. You just have to sit there and look cool." He called it visual percussion. I should have said no. I really should have said no. But Roderick promised he'd do my laundry for a month if I helped him out. And honestly, the pile of dirty socks in my room was starting to become a health hazard. The next morning, Roderick dragged me down to the basement to build the kit. Since we couldn't use Ward's real drums, they were at his house, Roderick decided we would build a replica set out of whatever junk we could find in the garage. "It has to look authentic, Greg," Roderick said, taping a frisbee to a music stand. "The camera adds 10 pounds of realism." We spent 4 hours constructing the worst-looking drum set in human history. The bass drum was an old tire we found in the woods. The cymbals were trash can lids that Mom had thrown out because a raccoon chewed on them. The snare drum was a medium-sized pizza box from last night's dinner, still greasy. "It looks rustic," I said, trying to be nice. "It looks metal," Roderick corrected me. He sprayed the whole thing with black spray paint until the basement smelled like a chemical factory. Then he handed me 2 wooden spoons from the kitchen. "Okay, here's the plan. I'm going to blast a recording of Exploded Diaper on the stereo. You just hit the pizza box and the trash lids in time with the music and make a rock face." I asked him what a rock face was. He scrunched up his nose like he smelled something bad and screamed silently. "Like that," he said. It was time to film. Roderick set up Mom's video camera on a tripod. He made me wear his leather jacket, which was 3 sizes too big and smelled like corn chips. "Remember," Roderick whispered, "don't actually hit the stuff too hard. Its structural integrity is questionable." He pressed record and ran to his guitar. The music started blasting through the speakers. It was deafening. I started hitting the pizza box with the wooden spoons. Thwack, thwack, thwack. I was actually getting into it. I felt kinda cool. I closed my eyes and did the rock face. I imagined I was playing in a stadium, not a basement that smelled like paint fumes. Then Mom opened the basement door. "Boys," she shouted down the stairs, "Dad says you're shaking the floorboards." I didn't hear her because of the music, but I saw Roderick's eyes go wide. Mom walked down the stairs, smiling. "Oh, look at you two, playing together. This is so sweet." She didn't realize it was a fake video. She thought I was actually a musical prodigy. "Go, Greggy, go!" she cheered, clapping her hands. The pressure was on. I wanted to impress Mom, so I decided to do a drum solo. I raised the wooden spoons high in the air and brought them down on the snare drum, the pizza box, with all my might. Crunch! My left spoon went straight through the cardboard. My hand got stuck inside the greasy pizza box. I tried to pull my hand out, but the box was taped to the tire, and the tire was taped to the floor. Roderick was still playing, screaming the lyrics to Exploded Diaper, totally oblivious. I yanked my arm back. The entire drum set came with it. The tire rolled forward. It hit the stand holding the trash can lid cymbals. The cymbals crashed down onto Roderick's amplifier. Zzzz. A spark flew out of the amp. The music cut out instantly. Now the only sound in the basement was the clatter-clang crash of the fake drum set collapsing on top of me. I was lying on the floor, tangled in duct tape, with a pizza box on my arm and a tire on my legs. Mom stopped clapping. "Oh, dear. Is that pepperoni?" Roderick looked at the camera, which was still recording, looked at his fried amp, looked at me. "You're fired," he said. "We never sent the tape to the high school dance committee, but Mom kept it. She says she's going to play it at my wedding someday. Roderick still owes me for the laundry, by the way. He says the emotional damage to his band canceled out the debt. So yeah, that's why I don't play instruments."
Friday. I've finally figured out why I'm not famous yet. It's not because I lack talent or charisma, it's because I don't have a gimmick. I was watching this video online today of a guy named Daredevil Dave who gets 1 million views just by eating spicy peppers and screaming. I thought to myself, I scream all the time. I could totally monetize that. But I can't handle spicy food. The last time I ate a flamin' hot Cheeto, my tongue went numb for 3 days and Mom had to feed me ice chips with a spoon. So I need a different angle. That's when I saw it. The Psychic Detective. There's this show where a guy touches an object and senses its history. I figure if I can convince everyone at school I have superpowers, I'll be sitting at the cool table by Monday. I decided to test my new abilities on Rolly. I told him to come over immediately for a supernatural emergency. I told Rolly that the spirits told me he had a candy bar in his pocket. He didn't, but he did have a half-eaten stick of gum, which I counted as a hit. The problem is Rolly is terrible at keeping secrets. I told him he had to be my manager and hype me up, but he just asked if this meant we could start a detective agency to find his lost dinosaur toy. I told him to think bigger. We aren't finding toys, Rolly. We are finding destiny. Or at least finding out where Roderick hides his stash of Halloween candy. Saturday. The Psychic Greg operation is already hitting some bumps in the road. I spent all morning making business cards. I wanted them to look professional, so I used Dad's fancy printer paper, but I messed up the spelling on the first batch. Mom found the cards in the trash and gave me a 20-minute lecture about wasting resources and how threatening people is not a business model. She said if I really wanted to help people, I should volunteer to help Dad clean the garage. I told her my psychic vibrations were telling me that the garage was full of negative energy and I couldn't risk it. That excuse didn't work, so I spent 3 hours moving boxes of old taxes. But while I was in there, I found the perfect prop for my act. It was an old crystal ball Dad bought at a garage sale back when he went through his magic tricks phase. It was actually just a glass paperweight, but if you squinted, it looked mystical. I called Rolly and told him to meet me at the playground. It was showtime. We set up a booth on the park bench. I draped a blanket over my head and put the crystal ball on a cardboard box. At first, nobody stopped. Most people just walked by and looked at us like we were weirdos, which, to be fair, is how people usually look at us. But then, Fregley showed up. Fregley is the last person you want as a customer because he usually pays in boogers or belly button lint, but I was desperate for a testimonial. "Oh, great Greg, can you tell me if I'm going to get a new scab today?" I gazed into the paperweight. I made some ooh noises and waved my hands around. "The spirits say yes," I told him, "but only if you go away right now." Fregley got so excited he ran directly into a lamppost. "It came true," he screamed from the ground. Suddenly, we had a crowd. A bunch of kids from the neighborhood saw Fregley's miracle and wanted to know their futures too. I was raking in the cash. I told a kid named Scotty that he was going to find money, and he found a nickel in the sandbox 5 minutes later. I was on fire. I was feeling pretty good about myself. I was basically a celebrity. I was even planning on raising my prices to $2. But then the universe decided to humble me. Roderick's van, loaded diaper, pulled up to the curb. Roderick didn't even get out of the van. He just shouted, "Hey, Mystic Greg, Mom says if you're psychic, you should have known she was making Brussels sprouts for dinner." The cool kids started laughing. My credibility was crumbling. I tried to save face. "The spirits are clouding my vision," I yelled. "I need to, recharge my crystal." I grabbed the glass ball and tried to make a dramatic exit, but I forgot that I had the blanket draped over my head. I tripped over the cardboard and the crystal ball went flying. It rolled down the sidewalk, bounced off the curb, and rolled directly into the storm drain. There was a moment of silence. Then Rolly whispered, "Did you see that coming?" I had to leave the playground in shame. Plus, now I owe Dad a new paperweight. When I got home, Mom was indeed making Brussels sprouts. I told her I already ate at the spiritual realm, but she made me sit at the table until I finished them anyway. So much for my career as a psychic. I think I'll go back to my original plan, trying to convince people I have an evil twin who does all my homework poorly.
Monday. If there is a worse way to start a week than knowing you have first period gym with Mr. Underwood, I don't want to know about it. Usually Monday gym means running laps until you taste pennies in the back of your throat. But today was worse. Mr. Underwood announced last Friday that we are starting a 3-week unit on folktale dancing. You might think, "Greg, you're an athlete. You can handle a little dancing." First of all, nobody thinks I'm an athlete. Second, this involves holding hands with girls who hold their noses whenever I walk by and wearing these plastic vest things that haven't been washed since the Carter administration. I knew I had to get out of it. My plan was simple, the classic sprained ankle. I went digging under the bathroom sink yesterday and found this crusty old Ace bandage that I think my dad used back when he thought he was going to get into racquetball. It smelled faintly of medicine and basement mildew, which I figured added to the authenticity. I spent an hour last night practicing my limp in front of the mirror. The key is to not overdo it. You can't drag the leg like a zombie. You just have to do a subtle wince every time your foot touches the carpet. I had it down cold. I was practically ready for Hollywood. But because the universe hates me, things started going wrong before I even left the house. Mom has been on this kick lately about reducing the Heffley chemical footprint, which basically means she stopped buying the laundry detergent that actually works and started buying this stuff that looks like pond scum and costs 3 times as much. It's called Mother Earth's Gentle Wash, and it's unscented. The problem is when you wash teenage boy gym clothes in unscented sludge, they don't come out smelling like nothing. They come out smelling like wet dog mixed with a tuna sandwich that's been left in a hot car. I pulled my gym shirt out of the dryer this morning and almost gagged. "Mom," I said, holding the shirt away from me with 2 fingers, "this smells like Fregley's basement." Mom just smiled her zen smile. "That's the smell of natural clean, Gregory. Your pores will thank me." My pores were already filing a lawsuit. I didn't have a choice. My only other option was wearing one of Roderick's hand-me-down shirts, and the last time I did that, I found a petrified chicken nugget in the pocket during social studies. So I put on the tuna dog shirt, wrapped my ankle in the crusty ace bandage, and limped out the door. Maintaining a fake limp for the entire 3-block walk to the bus stop is way harder than it looks. By the time I got to the corner, my good leg was tired from doing all the extra work. Rowley was waiting at the stop. He was wearing a t-shirt that said, "I'm a hoot," with a picture of a cartoon owl. Sometimes I wonder why I hang out with him, and then I remember it's because nobody else will. As soon as I got close, Rowley wrinkled his nose. "Ew, Greg," he said, loud enough for the entire bus stop to hear. "Did you step in something? You smell like the time my dad forgot the garbage cans when we went on vacation." "Shut up," I hissed, doing my practiced wince. "And stop staring. I sprained my ankle severely." Rowley looked down at my foot. "Wow, is it throbbing? My mom says throbbing is the body's alarm bell." "Yes, Rowley, it's throbbing like crazy." Just then, the bus pulled up. I made a big production out of hoisting myself up the stairs, groaning a little bit for effect. I thought I sold it pretty well, but the bus driver, Mr. Phillips, just yelled at me to move it before I held up traffic. The locker room atmosphere did not help the situation with my shirt. The usual smell of 50 guys spraying 50 different kinds of body spray, mixed with the Mother Earth's gentle wash, created a toxic cloud around me. I sat on the bench and slowly, painfully unlaced my shoe, making sure Mr. Underwood was watching. He was standing by his office door, arms crossed, wearing shorts that were way too tight for a man of his age. He walked over. His shadow fell across me. "Problem, Heffley?" he barked. "Yes, sir," I said, putting a tremble in my voice. "Terrible ankle sprain. Happened yesterday. I was rescuing a cat from a tree." Mr. Underwood stared at me. "A cat?" "A very heavy cat, sir." Mr. Underwood snorted. It sounded like a bulldog choking on a chew toy. "Let me see it." I nervously unwrapped the crusty ace bandage. My ankle underneath looked completely normal, not even a little pink. "It's internal bleeding," I lied quickly. "The worst kind." Mr. Underwood pointed at a spot on the floor. "Stand up. Do a squat." "A squat? But sir, the throbbing." "Squat." I did a squat. It didn't hurt my ankle, but my thighs immediately started burning because my main form of exercise is video games. I wobbled and almost fell over. "Pathetic," Mr. Underwood muttered. "It's not sprained, Heffley. Your legs are just noodles. Get dressed. You're dancing the polka." The next 45 minutes were the longest of my life. Not only did I have to do folktale dancing, but Mr. Underwood made me partner up with Fregley because there was an odd number of kids and nobody else wanted him. Fregley was way too excited about the polka. He kept trying to freestyle and ended up stepping on my good foot about 20 times. But the worst part was the heat. The gym was boiling, and as I started to sweat, the tuna dog smell from my shirt seemed to activate. It got stronger. Every time we had to do a do-si-do and spin past another pair of kids, they would visibly gag. Patty Farrell actually stopped dancing and yelled, "Mr. Underwood, Greg Heffley smells like a dead raccoon." Mr. Underwood blew his whistle. "Shake it off, Farrell. Focus on the rhythm." By the time the bell rang, I was physically and emotionally shattered. My fake limp leg was sore, my real legs were sore from the polka, and I'm pretty sure my social status has dropped lower than the kid who eats paste in art class. When I finally got home, I was ready to crawl into bed and stay there until college. But, of course, when I went upstairs to the bathroom to finally wash the stench off me, I found Manny sitting in the sink. He was using my toothbrush to scrub the toilet water off his rubber ducky. I hate Mondays.
Tuesday. I've gone on record about 1,000,000 times saying that privacy is a joke in this house.
But seriously, if Mom is going to force me to bring her decorative gourd basket down from the attic, I feel like I'm legally allowed to inspect whatever else is up there. I was shifting boxes around when I knocked over an old shoebox labeled Roderick's Awesome Stuff. Do not open or you will die. Obviously, I opened it immediately. Inside was mostly garbage. Some guitar picks that smelled like feet, a cassette tape of his band practice that sounded like a vacuum cleaner fighting a lawnmower, and a very crunchy, very old, petrified frog. I remembered this frog. Roderick found it by the dehumidifier 5 years ago and named it Jeremiah the Dry Guy. He claims it brings him good luck, which explains why his life is terrible, because that frog looked miserable. Anyway, I did the dumbest thing possible. I poked Jeremiah with a pencil. I barely touched the thing, I swear, but apparently 5 years of attic dryness had turned Jeremiah into pure dust held together by willpower. He instantly disintegrated into a pile of gray powder and 2 little dried-up eyeballs. I panicked. If Roderick found out I pulverized his lucky charm, he wouldn't just give me a noogie, he'd frame me for something major, like putting Dad's Civil War figurines in the dishwasher again. I grabbed the shoebox and ran to my room. I had 24 hours to find a replacement dehydrated amphibian before Roderick needed some good luck for his algebra retake. Wednesday. Finding a dead frog on short notice is way harder than you'd think. Society really doesn't cater to this specific need. My first plan was to fool Roderick with a decoy. I spent 20 minutes in a kitchen trying to sculpt a frog out of Mom's leftover meatloaf and some dryer lint for texture. It looked okay from a distance, but it smelled like ketchup and Spring Meadow fabric softener. Roderick isn't smart, but he knows what dead animals smell like. I ended up having to call Rolly. Rolly is still into weird little kid toys, so I figured he might have something useful. Do you have any rubber lizards or perhaps a very realistic toad figurine? I asked him over the phone. No, Rolly said, but my dad got me a squeaky rubber chicken from his business trip to Toledo. I hung up. Rolly is useless in a crisis. Then I struck gold. I was digging through Manny's toy chest, another privacy violation, but he's 3, so it doesn't count, and found a super realistic green rubber frog he got in a fast food meal. It was perfect, except it was bright lime green and squeaked loudly when you pressed its stomach. Jeremiah the Dry Guy was brown and definitely did not squeak. I had to perform emergency surgery. I spent the evening coloring the rubber frog with a permanent marker. It took forever because the marker kept smearing on the rubber. By the time I was done, it looked like a frog that fell into a vat of chocolate pudding and then rolled around in a dirt patch. It was close enough. I snuck back up to the attic and placed Jeremiah 2.0 back in Roderick's shoebox. I felt like a master criminal. Thursday. The problem with using permanent marker on rubber is the fumes. When I woke up this morning, the entire upstairs hallway smelled like a chemical factory. Roderick came out of his room rubbing his eyes. It smells like brains out here, he mumbled. He headed straight for the attic ladder. My heart stopped. He was going for the luck. I waited at the bottom of the ladder, preparing my alibi. I heard the shoebox open. Silence. Then a squeeze. Squeak! I forgot to take the squeaker out. Roderick thundered down the ladder holding Jeremiah 2.0 by one leg. The brown marker was already flaking off, revealing the lime green underneath. "Greg," he yelled, "what did you do to Jeremiah? He looks like he's molting, and he sounds like a dog toy." "I don't know what you're talking about," I said, trying to look casual while sweating profusely. "Maybe the attic humidity hydrated him." Roderick stared at me, then he squeezed the frog directly in my face. Squeak! "You killed him," Roderick whispered, horrified. "You killed the Dry Guy and replaced him with a phony." He didn't even hit me, he just looked genuinely sad, which was somehow way worse. He took the rubber frog into his room and slammed the door. I thought I was in the clear, but Roderick plays the long game. Friday. I found out my punishment this afternoon. When I got home from school, Roderick was waiting for me in the living room. He had the pile of original Jeremiah dust in a little Tupperware container.
We're having a service, Roderick said solemnly. He made me go into the backyard. He had dug a small hole near Mom's prize-winning petunias. You did the crime, you do the time, Roderick said. You have to deliver the eulogy and make it respectful. I stood there in the backyard holding a Tupperware of dust while Roderick stood behind me with his arms crossed and sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. Jeremiah was a good frog, I started, feeling ridiculous. He was very dry, and he stayed in a box for a long time. He will be missed, especially by Roderick, who has no other friends. "Hey," Roderick shouted, "stick to the script." Just then, Dad pulled into the driveway. He got out of the car and stared at us, me holding a Tupperware over a hole and Roderick looking like a Secret Service agent at a funeral. "I don't even want to know," Dad muttered, and went inside. I dumped the dust in the hole. Roderick made me salute while he played a terrible, screechy version of Taps on his electric guitar with a portable amp strapped to his belt. It was the most humiliating 20 minutes of my life. And to top it all off, Mom grounded me for a week because apparently the permanent marker fumes gave Manny a headache. I'm never cleaning the attic again.
Saturday. I should be at home right now, working on level 50 of Twisted Wizard. Instead, I am currently sitting on a school bus that smells like old cheese and desperation, heading into the middle of nowhere. A few weeks ago, Mom decided I needed to build character and develop leadership skills. So, against my will, she signed me up for the school's Weekend Wilderness Leadership Retreat. The brochure said it would be 2 days of invigorating outdoor challenges and team bonding. I knew it was going to be a disaster when I saw who was chaperoning, Mr. Underwood, our gym teacher. Mr. Underwood thinks any problem can be solved by doing push-ups in the mud. We arrived at Camp Grimwood around noon. The place looks like it hasn't been cleaned since the 1970s. The cabins are basically just lean-tos made of rotting wood. As soon as we got off the bus, Mr. Underwood blew his whistle so loud my ears rang. "Listen up, maggots," he yelled. He always calls us maggots, even though parents have complained about it like 5 times. "Drop your gear at Cabin 4 and meet at the Trust Circle in 10 minutes. Cabin 4 had 6 bunk beds that looked incredibly unstable. I immediately claimed a top bunk because I read somewhere that heat rises, and it was freezing in there. Also, I didn't want Fregley sleeping above me. Our first leadership activity was the Trust Fall. This is basically where you stand on a stump, close your eyes, fall backward, and hope the kids behind you aren't secretly planning your demise. I tried to get paired with Raleigh because I knew he wouldn't drop me on purpose, but Mr. Underwood said that was taking the easy way out and paired me with Chirag Gupta. Chirag is about half my size. When it was my turn to fall, I was pretty sure Chirag was just going to bounce off me. Surprisingly, Chirag actually caught me. But then it was my turn to catch. Mr. Underwood paired me with Ruby Bird. Ruby Bird is the toughest girl in our grade. She once bit a teacher. When Ruby fell back, I braced myself, but I wasn't ready for the sheer velocity. She flattened me like a pancake. Mr. Underwood said I lacked foundational stability and made me do 20 squat thrusts while everyone else went to lunch. By nighttime, I was ready to walk home. Dinner was something called trail stew, which I'm 90% sure was just canned dog food heated over a fire. We had a campfire where Mr. Underwood told ghost stories that weren't even scary, mostly just stories about kids who didn't listen to their gym teachers and got eaten by bears. The real horror show started when we went back to the cabin. I had smuggled a bag of sour gummy worms in my sleeping bag because I knew the food would be terrible. This turned out to be a critical tactical error. Around 2 a.m., I woke up to a scratching sound. I turned on my flashlight and came face to face with a raccoon the size of a medium dog. It was sitting on my chest, holding the bag of gummy worms. I screamed. The raccoon hissed. It grabbed the entire bag in its mouth and leaped off the top bunk, landing directly on Fregley below me.
Fregley thought he was being attacked by a forest goblin and started speaking in tongues. The whole cabin was awake for the rest of the night. Sunday. We were supposed to do orienteering this morning, which means getting lost in the woods with a compass that doesn't work. But Mr. Underwood canceled it because the health department showed up. Apparently, the raccoon that attacked me had raided the kitchen tent first and eaten a bunch of raw chicken. They had to evacuate the whole camp before lunch. Mom picked me up at the school parking lot. I smelled like wood smoke and raccoon fear. "So, did you become a leader?" Mom asked excitedly. I told her the only thing I led was a wild animal directly to Fregley's face. The worst part is Mr. Underwood gave me a needs improvement on my leadership evaluation because I failed to secure provisions from local wildlife. I'm never leaving my room on a weekend again.
Monday. I've come up with a lot of get-rich-quick schemes in my life, but I think I've finally cracked the code. I was watching this documentary on TV about street performers in Europe who paint themselves silver and stand perfectly still for 8 hours. Apparently, tourists just throw money at them. One guy made $300 just by pretending to be a space commander and not blinking. I realized this is the perfect job for me. I'm already great at doing absolutely nothing. In fact, if doing nothing was an Olympic sport, I'd be on the Wheaties box. I called up Raleigh and told him to get over here ASAP. I told him we were going to be business partners in Greg and Raleigh's Living Statue Emporium. We didn't have any body paint, but I found a bucket in the basement labeled titanium grade roof sealant. It was silver and thick, which seemed professional. We stripped down to our underwear and covered ourselves in the stuff. I told Raleigh to strike a heroic pose. He decided to pose like a gargoyle he saw in a cartoon, crouching down with his mouth open. I went for a classic thinking man pose. The problem with titanium-grade roof sealant is that it doesn't just dry, it cures. Within 10 minutes, I realized I couldn't uncross my arms. I tried to shout to Raleigh, but my jaw felt like it was stuck in a bear trap. I yelled. Raleigh was worse off. He was stuck in that crouching gargoyle squat. He started to tip over, but because his legs were frozen solid, he didn't collapse, he just rolled onto his side like a tipped-over cow statue. That's when Roderick walked in. Usually, Roderick would just make fun of us, but when he saw 2 silver statues in a garage, his eyes lit up. He didn't see his little brother. He saw a business opportunity. He grabbed a piece of cardboard and wrote, "Alien Invaders $5 a peek." Then he dragged us, literally dragged us across the concrete floor out to the driveway. Because I was stuck in the thinking man pose, Roderick used me as a coat rack for his sweaty gym jacket. It gets worse. Manny came outside to play. When Manny saw me, he didn't get scared. He thought I was a giant action figure. He started looking for the battery compartment. When he couldn't find one, he decided to customize his new toy. He ran inside and got Mom's permanent markers. Because I couldn't move my hands to defend myself, Manny drew a mustache, a monocle, and the words "stinky poo" right on my forehead. Then he moved on to Raleigh. Since Raleigh was stuck in a crouching position with his mouth open, Manny decided to use him as a cornhole target. He started throwing handfuls of mulch into Raleigh's open mouth. Cooey, Raleigh tried to spit it out, but his jaw was glued open. Mom finally came home and saw the spectacle. Her 2 sons and the neighbor boy covered in industrial roofing tar, with Roderick charging the mailman $5 to take a picture with us. She freaked out and tried to wash us off with the garden hose, but the can said waterproof for 50 years. The water just bounced off me. Dad had to look up the solution online. Apparently, the only thing that removes titanium sealant is heavy-duty turpentine and aggressive scraping. Dad spent 4 hours scrubbing us with a wire brush. It hurt, but not as much as my dignity. We got most of the silver off, but the sealant had dyed our skin a weird glittery gray color. We looked like zombie robots. The worst part?
We couldn't get the paint off Raleigh's face because he was crying too much, so he still looks like a silver gargoyle from the neck up. Roderick drove us to school this morning in the loaded diaper van because Mom was too embarrassed to be seen with us. But because the van has no seats in the back and we were still stiff from the chemical reaction, we slid around the back of the van every time Roderick turned a corner. Thud, clang, ow! We walked into homeroom 10 minutes late. The teacher, Mr. Ira, looked at me, shiny, gray, and smelling like a chemical plant, and at Raleigh, whose head was still 100% silver. "Is this a statement?" Mr. Ira asked. "Zooey mama," Raleigh whispered sadly. "I think I'm just going to live in the nurse's office for the rest of the year."
Tuesday. I've always said that if I had the right tools, I'd be a millionaire by now. The problem is, Mom and Dad never support my business ventures. They still haven't forgiven me for the water gun security service I tried to start last summer, which apparently ruined the carpet. But today, my luck finally changed. I was digging through the garage looking for my old video game controller when I found something amazing behind Dad's old weight bench. It was a Treasure Master 3000 metal detector. Apparently, Dad bought it 5 years ago when he lost his wedding ring in the backyard, but he gave up after 10 minutes and just bought a new ring. He tossed the detector in the garage and forgot about it. I realized right away that I was holding the key to my future. People drop valuable stuff all the time: watches, jewelry, rare coins, teeth with gold fillings. The ground is basically made of money, and nobody is picking it up but me. I decided I needed a partner for this operation, someone strong enough to do the digging, but not smart enough to demand a 50-50 split of the profits. Naturally, I called Rolly. Wednesday. I told Rolly to meet me at the park after school and to bring a shovel. When he showed up, he was wearing a construction helmet and a neon orange vest. He said his mom wanted him to be visible so he wouldn't get hit by a car while we were working. I told Rolly he looked like a crossing guard who got lost, but he didn't care. We started scanning the area near the playground. My plan was simple. I operate the sophisticated machinery, the detector, and Rolly operates the manual labor, the shovel. For the first 20 minutes, we didn't get a single beep. I was starting to think the batteries were dead. But then, right near the sandbox, beep, beep, beep. The machine was going crazy. The signal was strong. I yelled, "Dig, Rolly! Dig like the wind!" Rolly started shoveling sand like a maniac. I was already planning what I was going to buy with the treasure, maybe a jet ski or my own personal soda fountain. Rolly hit something hard. Clunk. My heart stopped. This was it. Pirate gold? A Civil War cannonball? Rolly reached in and pulled out the object. It was a rusty hubcap from a 1980s station wagon. Tuesday. I was ready to quit the treasure hunting business after the hubcap incident, but I did some research online last night. It turns out the real money isn't at the park, it's at the beach. The only problem is the nearest beach is the one at the town lake, and it's mostly just mud and goose poop. I convinced Rolly to come with me to the lake, but I had to promise him a 15% cut of the findings. He tried to negotiate for 20%, but I told him the rental fee for the metal detector was expensive. We got to the lake and I turned on the machine. Almost immediately, we got a hit. Beep! Rolly dug it up. It was a nickel. "We're rich!" Rolly screamed. He has no concept of inflation. We kept going. Beep! A foil wrapper. Beep! A zipper from a jacket. Beep! A soda can tab. We were gathering a lot of garbage, but no treasure. Then, near the old boat dock, the detector made a sound I'd never heard before. It wasn't a beep. It was a low, steady hum. "We're big, Rolly," I whispered. "This is huge." Rolly started digging in the mud. He dug for 10 minutes straight. The hole was getting deep. He was up to his knees in sludge. "I feel something metal," Rolly shouted. He pulled with all his might. There was a loud sucking sound as the mud released its grip. It was a heavy,
iron chain. "Pull more," I said. "It's probably attached to a treasure chest." Rolly kept pulling the chain, and pulling and pulling. Suddenly, we heard a loud crack from the dock. The entire wooden pier started to tilt. It turns out the chain wasn't attached to a treasure chest. It was the anchor chain for the floating dock, and Rolly had just unhooked it. The dock, with 2 fishermen sitting on it, slowly started drifting out into the middle of the lake. "Run!" I screamed. We sprinted all the way back to my house. I threw the metal detector back behind the weight bench in the garage, and I told Rolly that if anyone asks, we were at the library all afternoon studying for a geography test. I think I'm done with manual labor. Next week, I'm going to try to teach Manny how to count cards.
Friday. I've come to a serious realization today. If I don't bulk up before high school, I am going to be eaten alive. Literally. There's a kid in my PE class named Tyson who is already shaving, and I'm 99% sure he growled at me when I took the last kickball today. I went to Dad and asked if he would pay for a membership to Crusher's gym downtown. I told him it was an investment in my survival. Dad laughed and said the only thing I need to crush is the bag of soda cans in the recycling bin. I tried to explain that I have the potential to be a world-class athlete if I just had the right equipment, but Dad just handed me a rake and walked away. Typical. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I figure, how hard can it be to build muscle? It's basically just lifting heavy stuff up and putting it down again. I don't need a fancy gym for that. I just need some ingenuity. I went into the garage to scout for raw materials. I found a rusty shovel, a broken lawn chair, and a stack of old paint cans from when Mom painted the guest room 3 years ago. I duct taped 2 gallons of summer peach paint to the ends of an old broomstick. Boom! Professional weight set. I called Rowley and told him to come over immediately. I told him I was launching an exclusive members-only fitness club, and I was willing to waive the initiation fee since we're best friends. Rowley showed up 10 minutes later wearing his karate gi and a headband. I told him it wasn't that kind of gym, but he said the outfit makes him feel centered. I didn't have the energy to argue. I explained to Rowley that as the founder and CEO of the gym, my primary role was to supervise and motivate. His role was to be the chief testing officer. I set up the broomstick bench press using 2 stacks of old newspapers as the bench. I told Rowley to get pumping. I sat in the lawn chair and ate a bag of potato chips. Rowley asked why I wasn't lifting anything. I told him that the sound of my crunching was helping him keep a steady rhythm. It's called audio-visual coaching. Rowley started complaining that the paint cans were feeling a little loose, but I told him that was just his muscles trembling with fear. "Pain is just weakness leaving the body, Rowley," I shouted, tossing a chip into my mouth. Things were actually going pretty well until Manny wandered into the garage. He saw Rowley's face turning purple and decided to help. Manny walked up and tickled Rowley right in the armpits. Rowley jerked his arms, the duct tape snapped, and the broomstick cracked in half. Both gallons of summer peach paint exploded onto the concrete floor. It splashed all over Dad's workbench, it splashed all over Rowley's karate gi, and unfortunately, it splashed all over Manny. When Mom came home and saw the garage, she didn't seem to appreciate my entrepreneurial spirit. She said I owe Dad a new broom, and I have to repaint the garage floor. So the only thing getting a workout this weekend is me scrubbing concrete with a toothbrush. And the worst part? Rowley says his biceps actually do look bigger.
Saturday. I've always said that Saturdays are for sleeping until the sun is high enough to melt my brain, but Mom had other ideas today. Apparently, the town is celebrating Founders Day, and Mom volunteered Raleigh and me to be in the Junior Pioneers float. The problem is, the Junior Pioneers don't just ride on a float, they have to reenact the hardships of the early settlers. In Mom speak, that means wearing itchy wool trousers and carrying a heavy wooden butter churn for 3 miles. I told Mom that butter is bad for my cholesterol, but she just gave me that look, the one that says I'm 3 seconds away from losing my video game privileges for the next decade.
Raleigh showed up at my door at 8 a.m. looking way too excited. He was wearing a coonskin cap that looked like a dead squirrel had given up on life on top of his head. He told me he was looking forward to churning up some fun, and I honestly wondered for a second if we're even the same species. When we got to the staging area, things went from bad to worse. It turns out the float was just Mr. Jefferson's old flatbed trailer hitched to his SUV. And guess who the grand marshal of the parade was? Roderick. Well, not officially, but his band, Loaded Diaper, had somehow convinced the town council that they were a historical tribute to the evolution of sound. Roderick was sitting on a stack of amplifiers in the back of a van, wearing a powdered wig and a leather jacket. "Hey, Greggy," Roderick yelled, loud enough for the entire middle school jazz band to hear. "Make sure you churn that butter extra hard. I want a sandwich later." I tried to hide behind a giant papier-mâché cornstalk, but Raleigh started waving at Roderick like he was a long-lost brother. Sometimes I think Raleigh's biggest flaw is that he doesn't have a shame reflex. The parade started, and it was a total disaster. About 10 minutes in, Manny decided he didn't want to sit on the pioneer hearth anymore. He started throwing authentic stone-ground crackers at the crowd. Mom was too busy trying to hand out historical facts flyers to notice that Manny had effectively turned our float into a low-velocity catapult range. Then, disaster struck. The heat was starting to get to Raleigh. He decided that the butter churn was actually a giant percussion instrument and started banging on it in time with Roderick's drumming. The rhythm was so offbeat, it actually made the horses in the police escort ahead of us nervous. One of them got spooked, and suddenly the junior pioneers were moving at highway speeds. Mr. Jefferson had to slam on his brakes, and the butter churn, along with Raleigh and me, slid right off the back of the trailer. I landed head first in a pile of Founders Day commemorative hay bales. Raleigh landed on his feet, but his coonskin cap flew off and got caught in the spokes of the middle school color guard's lead unicycle. It caused a multi-instrument pileup that the local news is probably going to call the Great Brass Collision of 2025. Mom wasn't even mad about the parade being ruined. She was just upset that I lost the historical spirit. But honestly, I think I captured the pioneer experience perfectly. I'm pretty sure those early settlers spent most of their time covered in hay and wishing they were somewhere else. The only upside is that Roderick got kicked out of the parade because his powdered wig flew off and blinded a local judge. But I'm still not talking to Raleigh. He spent the whole walk home asking if we could go back tomorrow and do the sequel. Some people just never learn. Sunday. I've come to the conclusion that Sundays are actually a government experiment designed to see how much stress a middle schooler can take before they spontaneously combust. Most people use Sunday to recharge, but in the Heffley house, Sunday is basically International Chore Day. Mom decided that because I haven't seen the floor of my closet since the Obama administration, I needed to do a deep clean. I told Mom that the mess in my closet has developed its own ecosystem and that disturbing it could cause a biological hazard. She didn't buy it. She gave me 2 hours to finish or she's taking away my Wi-Fi for a week. Naturally, I called Raleigh. I figured if I'm going to go down, I'm taking him with me. Plus, Raleigh's the only person I know who actually finds organizing to be a fun weekend activity. Raleigh showed up wearing a headlamp and cargo shorts, looking like he was ready to explore a cave. He even brought his own label maker. I told him the goal wasn't just to clean, but to automate. Why spend 2 hours folding shirts when you can build a machine to do it for you? I'd seen a video online where a guy used a leaf blower and a cardboard box to instantly sort his laundry. We went down to the garage to get Dad's high-powered leaf blower. The thing sounds like a jet engine, which is usually a sign that something great or something terrible is about to happen. We set up the boxes in a sorting line. The plan was simple. I'd blow the clothes toward the boxes and they'd naturally fall into the shirts, pants, and things I'm pretty sure are socks categories. Things started out okay for about 3 seconds, but then I realized that Dad's leaf blower has a hurricane setting.
Instead of gently floating into the boxes, my laundry became a high-velocity vortex of fabric. One of my gym shorts hit Raleigh right in the face, and he got so startled that he accidentally knocked over the sorting tower. Then Roderick walked in. He didn't even look surprised. He just stood there with a bag of chips and said, "Nice cloud, Greggy. Is that your social life blowing away?" Then he told us that if we really wanted to clean, we should use the static charge method. He said if we rubbed all the clothes against the carpet really fast, they'd stick to the walls and the floor would be clean in no time. I knew it was a trick, but Raleigh was already rubbing a wool sweater on his head like a madman. The static charge method didn't work. All it did was turn Raleigh's hair into a giant orange puffball that looked like a startled dandelion. Just as Raleigh was trying to peel a pair of socks off his forehead, Mom walked in. She didn't even say anything. She just pointed at the leaf blower, which was currently blowing a cloud of dust and ancient Cheeto crumbs all over her historical landmark commemorative plates. The deep clean turned into a deep scrub. Mom made us clean the entire garage, the closet, and the kitchen floor. The only bright side is that Raleigh's hair stayed static charged for the rest of the day. Every time he walked past the cat, it would stick to his leg like a piece of Velcro. Roderick laughed so hard he actually choked on a chip, which I'm counting as a small Sunday victory. But I'm officially retiring from being an efficiency expert. From now on, I'm sticking to my original Sunday plan, hiding under the covers until Monday morning. Monday. Just when I thought middle school couldn't get any more ridiculous, Vice Principal Roy proved me wrong today during an emergency assembly. Apparently, the school board thinks our generation lacks fundamental caretaking skills. I thought that's why we have Nintendogs, but whatever. To fix this, they launched the Junior Guardians program. I was hoping we'd get to take care of something cool, like a hamster or maybe one of those robot babies that cries if you don't feed it. Nope, we got sacks of flour. We have to treat this sack of flour like it's a newborn child for the entire week. If you return it on Friday intact, you get extra credit in health class. If you bust it open, you get detention for neglect. The worst part is that Mom is totally on board with this. When I got home, she said my flour sack needed a nurturing environment. She made me draw a face on it with a Sharpie. Then she dug out an old Cabbage Patch Kid onesie from the attic and made me put the sack inside it. Now I have to carry around a 10-pound bag of baking ingredients dressed like a 1980s toddler. I named him Flourbert because I gave up on life about 20 minutes ago. I tried to leave Flourbert in my locker during lunch, but some kid snitched on me to Mr. Winsky, the hall monitor. Mr. Winsky gave me a lecture on abandonment and made me strap Flourbert into a high chair in the cafeteria. I've been a father for 6 hours and I'm already exhausted. Tuesday. The stress of parenthood is really getting to me. I barely slept last night because Mom made me put Flourbert in a shoebox next to my bed in case he needed anything. The only thing he needed was to not leak dust all over my comic books, which he failed at. Today, in gym class, things got complicated. Mr. Underwood said we had to run laps and that we couldn't leave our children unattended in the locker room because that's irresponsible. So we had to run the mile carrying our flour sacks. You know how hard it is to run when you aren't carrying anything? Try doing it while cradling a lumpy sack of carbohydrates. Rowley, of course, took it way too seriously. He kept shushing people because his sack, Lil Chef, was trying to nap. The real disaster happened during third period. I desperately had to use the bathroom. I didn't want to take Flourbert into the stall with me because, well, that's just unsanitary. I asked Rowley to babysit outside the door for 2 minutes. While I was in there, some 8th graders walked by and made fun of Rowley for holding 2 flour babies. Rowley got flustered and tried to hide them behind his back, but he lost his grip on Flourbert. I heard a thud, followed by a poof sound. I ran out. Flourbert was on the floor. He had a small tear in his side, and a little pile of white powder was leaking out onto the hallway linoleum. Rowley looked like he was going to cry. "He's bleeding," Rowley yelled. "It's flour, Rowley," I hissed. I had to perform emergency surgery using 3 Band-Aids and some duct tape I borrowed from the janitor. Now Flowerbert looks like he got into a knife fight. Wednesday. I thought the hardest part of this project would be keeping the sack safe at school. I forgot that I live in a house with Roderick. Roderick thinks the whole junior guardian thing is hilarious. He keeps asking me if Flowerbert is going to college or if he's going to work in a bakery. When I got home from school today, I put Flowerbert on the kitchen table so I could get a snack. I turned my back for 30 seconds to pour some juice. When I turned around, Flowerbert was gone. I panic searched the whole downstairs. Then I heard Manny giggling in the living room. I ran in. Manny had Flowerbert sitting on the floor. Manny was holding a sippy cup full of grape juice. "Baby thirsty," Manny said. Before I could dive across the room to stop him, Manny poured purple juice all over Flowerbert's face. The juice soaked right through the onesie into the paper sack. The Sharpie face started bleeding purple ink. Flowerbert looked like he was melting. Mom tried to help me clean him up with a hairdryer, but the flour just turned into a weird purple paste inside the bag. Now Flowerbert is soggy, heavy, and smells like warm grape juice. I don't think he's going to make it to Friday. Thursday. This is the end, the final straw. I brought soggy Flowerbert to school today, tucked deep inside my backpack so nobody would see the purple shame. We had a surprise assembly first period. It was a motivational speaker talking about overcoming obstacles. I sat near the top of the bleachers in the gym, trying to stay invisible. I put my backpack under my feet. About halfway through the speech, the guy started getting really animated, jumping around the stage. Everyone was clapping. The gym floor was vibrating. I guess the vibrations were too much for Flowerbert in his weakened state. Suddenly, there was a loud rip sound under my seat. The bottom of my backpack gave way. The wet flour sack burst open completely. It wasn't just a little leak this time, it was an explosion of purple goo and white dust. It cascaded down through the bleachers, landing directly on the girls' field hockey team sitting 2 rows below me. The motivational speaker stopped talking. The whole gym went silent except for the sound of purple sludge dripping onto the floor. Vice Principal Roy looked up at me. He didn't look motivated. I got detention for 2 weeks for disrupting an assembly and creating a hazardous environment. On the bright side, I don't have to carry that stupid sack around anymore. On the downside, Mom says I have to pay for a new backpack out of my allowance. I think I'm retiring from parenthood. It's too messy.
I used to think that the scariest thing in the world was the muddy hand in those horror movies Roderick watches, but I was wrong. The scariest thing in the world is a group of middle school girls whispering near the water fountain. Today, the atmosphere at school was totally weird. Usually, the girls just ignore us guys like we're part of the furniture, but today they were actually watching us. I walked past the cafeteria table where the popular girls sit, and I swear the room went silent. I found out later from Raleigh that the girls have started a new committee called the Boy Evaluation Squad. Apparently, Valentine's Day is coming up in a few weeks, and the girls are creating a short list of who is acceptable to be seen with in public. I told Raleigh not to worry because we're solid B-list material. I mean, I have decent hair, and I haven't picked my nose in class since the 3rd grade. Raleigh said, "I don't know, Greg. I heard they're grading us on chivalry." I don't even know what chivalry is. I assumed it was a type of cologne, so I went to the boys' bathroom and sprayed myself with some body spray I found in the Lost and Found. The real trouble started during the lunch break. I was trying to show off my chivalry by holding the door open for Holly Hills. This was my big moment to get on the short list. I stood by the cafeteria entrance waiting for her to walk by. I planned to open the door with a flourish and say something cool like, "After you, m'lady." But just as Holly was approaching, Fregley came out of nowhere. He was running because he had a juice box emergency. Fregley slammed into me, knocking me into the door frame. The door swung shut right in Holly's face. She dropped her tray. I tried to explain that it was an accident, but the Boy Evaluation Squad was watching. I saw Patty Farrell scribble something furiously on her clipboard in red ink. I'm pretty sure she wrote, "Greg Heffley, dangerous hazard." I thought the day couldn't get worse, but then we had fifth period. Because of the budget cuts, which I think is just code for the school running out of money to buy basketballs, the teachers decided to combine the boys' and girls' study hall into one giant room in the library. This was high stakes. The girls took over all the good tables near the window. The guys were relegated to the wobbly tables near the encyclopedias from 1994. I decided I needed to redeem myself. I needed a grand gesture. I noticed that Bryce Anderson, the most popular kid in school, was making the girls laugh by spinning a basketball on his finger. Big deal. I decided to impress the girls by showing off my intellect. I grabbed the giant, heavy dictionary and pretended to be casually reading it while leaning against the bookshelf. I wanted to look deep and mysterious. It was working. A girl named Chirag's cousin, I think her name is Trista, actually looked over at me. But then my arm got tired. That dictionary weighed about 40 pounds. My muscles started to spasm. I tried to put the book back on the shelf smoothly, but my hand was shaking so bad that I missed the shelf completely. The dictionary fell. It didn't just hit the floor, it hit the bottom shelf, which acted like a seesaw. On the other end of that shelf was a globe. The dictionary hit the shelf, and the globe launched into the air like a cannonball. The globe sailed across the room and landed directly in the middle of the girls' table. Specifically, it landed in a bowl of yogurt that Marcy Cooper was eating. Splash! Yogurt exploded everywhere. It got on the clipboards, it got on the short list, it got on Bryce Anderson's hair. The librarian, Mrs. Norton, banned me from the library for the rest of the semester. As I walked out, I saw Patty Farrell cross my name off the list completely. She didn't even use a pen. She used a black marker. I think I'm going to be single until I'm at least 40.
Thursday. I knew bringing my new professional magic kit to school was a bad idea, but Mom said it would be a good icebreaker. It broke the ice all right, and several beakers. So now I'm banned from the talent show and I have to pay for Mr. Underwood's tie. Roderick has been practicing his magic trick on me all afternoon, which mostly involved making my snacks disappear. Friday. The whole school is calling me Magic Disaster Kid now. Even the cafeteria lady gave me an extra scoop of mystery meat, probably out of pity. Roderick is still being a jerk. I found my lunch bag empty again, and he has left me a note inside which read, "Thanks for the lunch, Houdini." I'm officially done with magic, but I'm not done with Roderick. I need a plan to get him back, something that doesn't involve rabbits or ties. Saturday. My plan for revenge is simple but brilliant. Roderick's band, Loaded Diaper, has practice today. His favorite drumsticks are his life, so I decided to make a little switch. I replaced his drumsticks with 2 large carrots that I painted brown. I can't wait for the carrot solo. This is gonna be epic. Sunday. Well, my brilliant plan backfired spectacularly. Roderick's band loved the carrot sticks. They said it gave the drums a crunchy, organic sound. Now he's even more popular. So much for revenge. I'm retiring from pranks. From now on, I'll just stick to video games. They're less vegetable dependent.
Monday. Today was supposed to be epic. Raleigh brought his new Knights and Dragons set, and we built a massive fort in the living room. We were just about to hold a huge battle when Manny waddled in. He saw Raleigh's best dragon and decided it was his new favorite toy. Manny declared himself King Manny and attacked everyone who tried to take the dragon back. Raleigh is crying and my weekend is already ruined. This is not epic. We tried to negotiate with King Manny, but he just screamed and threw cushions. Then Roderick came downstairs with his phone out, laughing. He started filming us and called us the Night Losers. Roderick said he's going to post the video of us begging a toddler for a toy dragon on the internet. My reputation is going to be destroyed. Tuesday. Mom and Dad finally got home from their trip. They walked into a living room that looked like a war zone. Mom was furious. They blamed me for everything. Mom tried to get Manny to share the dragon, but he threw a tantrum for an hour. I got grounded for provoking him and not babysitting. Unbelievable. So I am stuck in my room for the rest of the weekend.
Rally went home, probably to play video games without me.
Mom and Dad said I need to think about my actions, which is code for stay out of sight. Manny is in the yard. Manny is ruling the backyard like a tyrant, and Roderick is documenting every humiliating moment for his documentary. I bet he's already editing the Greg is a loser highlight reel. My life is a joke.
Wednesday. If you think middle school couldn't get any worse, you clearly haven't met Vice Principal Roy. I am 95% sure his sole job description is make Greg Heffley's life miserable. Today, the school announced a new green initiative for the cafeteria. Apparently, they're trying to reduce waste, which sounds good on paper, but in practice, it means they are taking all the leftover food from Monday and Tuesday, mashing it together in a giant industrial blender, and serving it as Wednesday Surprise Loaf. The surprise is that it's legally considered food. I tried to hide the loaf in my pockets, which was a terrible plan that my mom had to discover when she did the laundry. Thursday. You know how sometimes you think you've hit rock bottom and then suddenly the floor falls out? That was my Thursday. Because nobody ate the surprise loaf yesterday, the school decided to repurpose it again today as eco-friendly Sloppy Joes. It was the exact same gray sludge, just on a bun. I was trying to sneak past the cafeteria to hide in the library when Rowley, wearing a bib, shouted my name. I turned around to shush him, tripped on a chair leg, and launched my lunch. The eco-friendly Sloppy Joe detached from the bun mid-flight. It soared like a majestic, greasy eagle and landed directly onto the head of Mr. Underwood, the phys ed teacher. Friday. If I had to rank the worst moments of my life, yesterday's Sloppy Joe incident is definitely in the top 3. My new nickname is Sloppy G, and Vice Principal Roy gave me detention for wasting food and assaulting a faculty member with a legume-based product. While everyone else was outside enjoying the start of the weekend, I was in the cafeteria kitchen with Mr. Underwood scrubbing giant metal pots that used to hold the gray sludge. He stood there with his arms crossed, still smelling faintly from yesterday's lunch, making me re-scrub spots I'd already cleaned. Saturday. I thought the weekend would be a safe zone. I was wrong. Mom decided to turn the whole incident into a teachable moment about appreciating food. My punishment? I have to cook dinner tonight. She took me to the store and made me buy raw hamburger meat, breadcrumbs, and eggs. So here I am at 6:30 p.m. on a Saturday, staring at a bowl of raw ingredients, basically recreating the Wednesday surprise loaf in my own home. To make matters worse, Roderick just walked in with his camera. "Smile, Sloppy G," he yelled. "This is going in the yearbook." I hate my life. Sunday. I need money desperately. The new Twisted Wizard 4 game comes out next week, and my piggy bank is just a sad, empty ceramic pig staring back at me. Mom said I should do chores, but folding laundry is for peasants. I need a career. That's when it hit me. I saw Mrs. Davis walking her poodle, Fifi, and Fifi looked miserable. I realized there's a gap in the market for high-end pet care, not just walking, but butlering. I decided to launch Greg Heffley's premium pet butler service. I spent all morning making flyers that said things like, "Does your pet deserve the royal treatment?" and "We cater to the most discerning clientele." I promised gourmet feeding, personalized entertainment, and stress reduction therapy. I pictured myself in a tuxedo serving caviar to a Persian cat on a velvet pillow. I handed the flyers out to the weirdest people in the neighborhood, figuring they'd have the weirdest pets. My first call came from Mrs. Higgins, the lady whose house always smells like boiled cabbage. She said her baby needed a companion while she was at a 6-hour bingo marathon. I showed up at her door expecting a fluffy cat or a small yappy dog. Instead, Mrs. Higgins came out holding Mr. Pebbles. Mr. Pebbles was not a cat. He was a 3-foot-long, crusty-looking iguana that was missing half its tail and seemed to hate the world. "He's very sensitive," Mrs. Higgins whispered, handing me a scroll of instructions that was longer than my arm. "He needs to be misted with imported volcanic spring water every 15 minutes. He must be read 18th century romantic poetry to soothe his nerves, and he only eats organic kale that's been hand-fed to him 1 leaf at a time." I think I swallowed my own tongue. The next 4 hours were the longest of my life. I couldn't find the imported volcanic spring water, so I used tap water. Mr. Pebbles immediately turned a sickly shade of purple and started sneezing this green slime everywhere. Then came feeding time. I tried to hand feed him a kale leaf, but he lunged and bit my thumb hard. I screamed and the container of live crickets I was holding fell and broke open. Now there were crickets jumping all over the living room. One landed in my hair. I was trying to get it out while simultaneously reading a poem called Ode to a Grecian Urn to a Purple Sneezing Iguana when the front door opened. It wasn't Mrs. Higgins. It was Roderick. He took one look at me, bleeding thumb, cricket in hair, reading poetry to a snotty lizard, and fell on the floor laughing. Then he took out his phone and started taking pictures. Monday. Mrs. Higgins came home and was furious that Mr. Pebbles was purple. She said I caused him emotional distress and refused to pay me the promised $20. Instead, she gave me a jar of her homemade pickled beets. I hate beets. When I got to school today, I found out what Roderick did with those pictures. He printed out the one of me reading poetry to the sneezing lizard and taped it to my locker. Someone had already written lizard liquor at the top in permanent marker. Now everyone is calling me that. Even the teachers are having trouble keeping a straight face. I officially retire from the pet butler business, and I still don't have enough money for Twisted Wizard 4.
Tuesday. The school invention fair is this Friday, and I'm already sweating. The grand prize is a $50 gift card to the arcade, which is basically a fortune. My brain, however, is a vast, empty desert of ideas. Mom suggested I invent a self-cleaning room, which is just her way of telling me my room is a pigsty. Dad suggested a remote-controlled golf ball, which is just sad. Then it happened. I was watching Dad trying to open a jar of extra crunchy pickles for 20 minutes. His face turned a color I've never seen in nature. That's when the lightning struck. The world doesn't need self-cleaning rooms. It needs the Jar Be Gone 3000, a robotic arm that opens any jar, no matter how stubborn. I'm going to be rich. Wednesday. Building the Jar Be Gone 3000 was harder than I thought. I raided the garage and found an old RC car base that only turns left, a broken whisk, some duct tape, and a rubber glove. I taped the whisk to the RC car and put the rubber glove over it for grip. It looked less like a futuristic robot and more like a cyborg chicken. I decided to test it on a banana, which was a mistake. I turned the remote on and the thing spun wildly to the left, whacked the banana with the whisk arm, and splattered banana goo all over the kitchen wall. Mom is going to murder me. I quickly hid the evidence and the robot under my bed. Thursday. The invention fair. The gym was filled with kids showing off volcanoes that actually erupted and robots that could solve Rubik's Cubes. And then there was me, with my caped-up Jar Be Gone 3000 that smelled faintly of old banana. When the judges came to my table, I was sweating bullets. "Behold," I declared, "the future of jar opening." I put a small jar of olives in front of it and hit the on button. The robot didn't open the jar. Instead, it did a high-speed spin, grabbed the jar with its rubber glove claw, and flung it across the gymnasium like a discus.
It flew right over Vice Principal Roy's head and shattered against the wall behind him. The sound was deafening. Friday. I didn't win the $50 gift card. I won a week of detention for endangering school faculty with projectile olives. Mom is furious, Dad is still struggling with that pickle jar, and I'm grounded until I'm 40. But the weirdest thing happened. Roderick, who usually thinks everything I do is lame, actually thought the Jar Be Gone 3000 was cool. He wants to borrow it for his band's next show. He says they can use it to launch stuff into the crowd, like t-shirts or maybe even raw eggs. I told him it only turns left, but he said that's part of the artistic vision. I think I might have accidentally invented something even worse than a jar opener.
Saturday. I had a foolproof plan for today. The strategy was simple. Sleep until 11:30, carry a bowl of cereal into the living room, and play NetherRealm Barbarian 3 until my thumbs fell off. I figured if I didn't make eye contact with anyone until noon, I couldn't be assigned any chores. But of course, Dad has some kind of radar for when I'm trying to relax. I hadn't even gotten the crust out of my eye before he burst into my room dressed like he was going on a jungle safari. "Up and at 'em, Greg," he shouted, way too cheerily. "I rented a power washer. We're going to blast the mildew off the patio furniture." I don't know why Dad always says we. It's never we. It's always me doing the actual labor while Dad supervises and drinks lemonade. When we got outside, I realized this wasn't just a normal power washer. It was an industrial-grade machine, probably meant for stripping paint off battleships. The thing looked like a robot cannon. Dad handed me the spray gun, which weighed about 50 pounds. "Careful with this, Gregory. It's got a kick." The second I pulled the trigger, I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. The recoil nearly dislocated my shoulder, and the water jet was so powerful, it didn't just clean the patio chair, it blasted a hole right through the plastic webbing. Dad came running over. "Greg, you have to angle it. You're destroying the furniture." He took the gun to show me how it's done, but Dad forgot he was wearing his flimsy flip-flops instead of his work boots. He aimed at a stubborn stain on the pavement, the water hit his big toe, and he let out a screech. He dropped the gun, but the trigger got stuck in the on position. The nozzle whipped around like an angry snake. It ended up blasting the sliding glass door, which scared Mom half to death in the kitchen. Dad shut the machine off and glared at me like I was the one wearing flip-flops. "Go inside, Greg. You're a liability." Mission accomplished. I figured since I was technically grounded from yard work, I could sneak over to Rally's house. Rally's parents just got central air conditioning, and their house is always freezing, which is way better than the sweatbox my house is right now. When I got there, I realized Rally was one of his phases. "Greetings, Gregory," Rally shouted when he opened the door. He was wearing a bright yellow construction helmet and a tool belt that was way too big for him. "I am Fix-It Rally today. My dad got me this authentic junior handyman kit." Rally's kit was basically plastic tools for toddlers, but he was dead serious about it. He said he was going to renovate his bedroom. I should have turned around and gone home right then. "My first project is to install this high-end shelving unit," Rally announced, pointing to a flimsy cardboard box that said, "Easy Assemble-Lee Shelf." He spent 45 minutes trying to hammer a plastic screw into the drywall with his plastic hammer. All he did was make a bunch of dents in the wall and get sweaty. Eventually, I got bored of watching Rally destroy his house and decided to head back. When I got home, the coast seemed clear. Dad was icing his toe in front of the TV, and Mom was busy yelling at Roderick for something unrelated. Finally, my time had come. I went down to the basement and fired up the console. I'd been grinding on NetherRealm Barbarian 3 for 3 weeks, and I was finally about to fight the level 50 Orc Lord, Skull Armor of Doom. My character was naked, holding a stick, and standing back at the starting village.
My save file was gone. Just then, Manny walked past the basement doorway. He was holding a sticky controller and humming the theme song to the game. He looked at me, blinked once, and said, "Barba Wingo bye-bye." I'm starting to think my family doesn't want me to be happy.
Sunday. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Weekends are way too short. And they are even shorter when your dad decides Sunday is the perfect day for Project Manhood. Usually, I spend Sundays trying to beat my high score on zombie bunnies of Neptune before Mom forces me to go outside and get fresh air, which is basically just code for getting hit by acorns squirrels throw at me. But today, Dad woke me up at 7 a.m. 7! He had this crazy look in his eye and was holding a wrench the size of my leg. "Gregory," he said, "today's the day you learn how to fix a leaky faucet. It's a vital life skill." I told Dad I was pretty sure my future involved paying other people to do that stuff for me while I sat in a mansion made of gold, but he wasn't hearing it. The problem is, Dad isn't exactly Bob the Builder himself. Last time he tried to fix the toaster, he somehow managed to electrocute the cat and burn toast that wasn't even in the toaster yet. We spent 3 hours under the bathroom sink. My job was to possess a natural inability to hold light still. Dad kept yelling at me to stop shaking the beam, like I was doing a disco light show on purpose. It all went south when Dad asked me to hand him the channel locks. I didn't know what channel locks were, so I handed him Manny's rubber ducky that was sitting on the tub ledge. Dad got so mad he jerked his head up and smashed it against the U-pipe. He dropped the wrench, which landed directly on my big toe. So yeah, Project Manhood ended with Dad having a goose egg on his head and my toe throbbing like a cartoon heart. I spent the rest of the day icing my foot while Manny watched a 3-hour marathon of the Snurples at max volume. I'm pretty sure this is what prison is like, only with worse snacks. Monday. You know how in movies when a kid gets injured, they come to school the next day with a cool cast and everyone wants to sign it? Yeah, that's not what happened to me. My toe was purple this morning. Mom refused to let me stay home because she said I was being dramatic, but she also didn't want me wearing my normal sneakers. Her solution was to make me wear one of Dad's giant floppy sandals to school, just the left one, so I was wearing my right sneaker and a size 12 leather sandal on my foot. I walked like a pirate who had just gotten off a spinning teacup ride. Clop, squeak, clop, squeak. The second I got on the bus, the teasing started. "Nice shoe, Heffley," yelled nasty teenager hoodlum number 1 from the back seat. "Did you steal it from Bigfoot?" Even Rolly wasn't helpful. "Wow, Greg, your foot looks like it's going on a vacation without the rest of you." He'd think he meant it as a compliment, but with Rolly, you never know. By third period, the rumor had spread that I had some sort of highly contagious foot fungus and the sandal was medical grade. At lunch, I had a whole table to myself, which honestly wasn't the worst thing in the world until Fregley tried to sit with me. He pointed at the sandal. "Does it ooze?" he whispered way too excitedly. "My belly button oozes when I eat cheese." I moved to the library for the rest of lunch. I'd rather hang out with books about the Dewey Decimal System than Fregley's oozing navel. Tuesday. Just when I thought things couldn't get more humiliating, Roderick entered the chat. I was trying to sneak out of the house this morning before Mom could force me into the sandal again, but Roderick intercepted me in the hallway. He had his phone out. "Well, well, well," he said, grinning like a villain in a low-budget movie, "if it isn't Cinderella and her glass slipper." It turns out Roderick had taken a picture of me asleep on the couch last night with my purple toe sticking out, looking like a grape that had been stepped on. "This is prime blackmail material, Greggy," he said. "Imagine if Holly Hills saw this. She'd probably barf." Roderick's terms were simple. I had to do Roderick's chores for a week. If I refused, the purple toe picture would be accidentally airdropped to half the middle school. I hate doing my own chores, but doing Roderick's is torture. His room is basically a biohazard zone. I found a slice of pizza under his bed that I'm pretty sure was from my 9th birthday party. The worst part was when Dad came home and saw me cleaning Roderick's drums. "See, Susan," Dad told Mom, "I told you Project Manhood will instill a sense of responsibility in him. He's already taking initiative." I think I hate Sunday. Wednesday. I decided today that the sandal had to go. I didn't care if my toe fell off. The social damage was becoming permanent. I managed to jam my swollen foot into my regular sneaker before school. It felt like my toes were being digested by a boa constrictor, but at least I looked normal. I made it through first and second period okay, just limping a little, but then came PE. Mr. Underwood announced we were playing dodgeball. Normally, this is bad news because I have the athletic ability of a damp sponge, but today it was a death sentence. I tried to hide in the back behind Chirag Gupta, which didn't work well because Chirag is 3 feet shorter than me. Then disaster struck. A red rubber ball thrown by some steroid-fueled 8th grader was hurtling straight towards my face. My instincts kicked in. I tried to jump back. My purple toe, jammed tightly into the sneaker, said nope. My foot just gave up. I buckled, I fell forward, face planting onto the gym floor. But the worst part wasn't the fall. The worst part was that the pressure of the fall literally made my sneaker explode. The stitching on the side just popped open. My purple toe burst free from the shoe like the Incredible Hulk ripping his shirt. The gym went silent. Everyone stared at my mutant grape toe sitting there on the polished wood floor. Mr. Underwood blew his whistle. Heffley, nurse's office, now, and put that thing away. You're scaring the 6th graders. So yeah, now I'm sitting in the nurse's office with an ice pack taped to my foot. Mom is on her way to pick me up, and the worst part? Roderick already texted me. He heard about the toe explosion and said my chore sentence has just been extended to 2 weeks. I seriously need to move to a different country.
Thursday. After my talent show ban was lifted, the school mid-year talent show is coming up. I need to find a way to become famous without any actual talent. I was rummaging through the attic looking for my old magic kit when I found this. It's an old ventriloquist dummy that must have belonged to Dad. It's incredibly creepy, with one lazy eye and a painted-on smile that looks way too eager. But then it hit me. Ventriloquism. How hard could it be? You just don't move your lips. This is my ticket to stardom. I'm naming him Lil Greg, even though he looks more like a goblin. Friday. Turns out ventriloquism is harder than it looks. I can't stop my lips from moving, so I just talk out of the side of my mouth like I'm having a stroke. I spent an hour making the dummy say mean things about Rowley's mom, which was hilarious, but the joke was on me later. I woke up in the middle of the night to find Lil Greg's face 2 inches from mine. I screamed so loud I woke up Manny. It was Roderick, of course. He thinks he's so funny. Saturday. The talent show audition. My time to shine. I walked on stage, cool as a cucumber. Then the stage lights hit me and I started sweating like a pig. My routine was a disaster. My jokes fell flat, and my ventriloquism was just me muttering while jiggling the doll. Then the unthinkable happened. I make Lil Greg bow, and his head fell off. It rolled right off the stage and landed at the feet of Holly Hills, the prettiest girl in school. She screamed and kicked it away. Sunday. I am officially the laughingstock of the entire school. Everyone is calling me Dummyhead. I tried to throw Lil Greg away in the trash, but it didn't work. I came home from school to find him sitting on my bed, perfectly repaired. There was a note taped to his chest that said, "You can't get rid of me that easy, Lil Greg." I know it was Roderick. My life is a nightmare. Monday. I've always said that if I'm going to become famous one day, I need to make sure my biography is accurate. But the problem is I'm surrounded by people who are trying to sabotage my legacy before it even starts. Take this morning, for example. I came downstairs ready to eat my bowl of Fruity O's in peace, only to find Mom sitting at the kitchen table with that look on her face. It's the look she gets when she's been reading Smart Parenting Monthly. Whenever Mom reads that magazine, my life gets about 50% worse for at least 3 days. "Gregory," she said, tapping a glossy page, "did you know that the average teenager spends 9 hours a day staring at a screen? It's rotting your hippocampus." I don't know what a hippocampus is, but I'm pretty sure mine is fine. I told Mom that actually video games help my hand-eye coordination, which is technically a sports skill. She didn't buy it. We are doing a digital detox, Mom announced. No TV, no video games, and no cell phones for the entire week. We are going to reconnect as a family. I looked at Dad, hoping he would step in and be the voice of reason, but Dad was just staring at his coffee mug, probably trying to mentally play a round of Civilization in his head before the ban. The worst part is that school is a nightmare right now. There's a new kid named Bryce Anderson. Not the popular Bryce Anderson, a different Bryce Anderson, who has convinced everyone that coolness is determined by how many zippers your clothes have. I checked my wardrobe and I have exactly 0 unnecessary zippers. I'm basically invisible. So I have no video games to escape into and I have 0 social status. I decided I needed to take drastic measures. I went rummaging through the boxes in the basement looking for something that would make me stand out. That's when I found it. Tuesday. I think I might have hit the jackpot. Deep in a box marked Frank's college years, I found a leather jacket. And let me tell you, this thing is intense. It's got buckles, it's padding, and most importantly, it has about 15 zippers. I put it on in front of the mirror. It was a little big and it smelled kind of like a mix of mothballs and old gym socks, but I looked tough. I looked like one of those guys who rides a motorcycle through a ring of fire. I figured if I wore this to school, nobody would care that I haven't played the new Twisted Wizard update. They'd be busy admiring my rugged new look. The only problem was the weather. The weatherman said it was supposed to be unseasonably warm today, like 80 degrees. But fashion knows no temperature, so I zipped that thing all the way up to my chin and headed to the bus stop. Raleigh was waiting there wearing a shirt with a cartoon dinosaur that said, "I'm a rar star." "Now, Greg," Raleigh said, "you look like that guy from the music video my mom likes, the one who dances in the rain." I told Raleigh to zip it, pun intended. When I got to school, I expected the hallways to part like the Red Sea, and they kind of did, mostly because the jacket made a squeak, squeak, squeak noise every time I moved my arms. I walked into homeroom and the heat hit instantly. It was like stepping into an oven. I could feel sweat trickling down my back, but I refused to unzip. If you unzip, you lose the mystique. Mr. Ira asked me take my jacket off because outerwear is for outdoors. I said, "I can't, sir. It's a part of who I am now." I think he let me keep it on because he didn't want to deal with the paperwork of arguing with me. Wednesday. Okay, the jacket was a mistake, a huge mistake. Yesterday afternoon on the bus ride home, the temperature spiked. I was sweating so much that I was basically boiling in my own juices like a human dumpling. By the time I got home, I was ready to rip the thing off and throw it in the trash. But there was a problem. The sweat had stuck to my skin, and the main zipper, the big silver one right down the middle, was stuck. And I mean stuck. I pulled, I yanked, I even wrapped a bar of soap on it. Nothing. I walked into the kitchen, arms stuck at my sides like a penguin, and found Roderick eating a sandwich. "Nice look," Roderick said. "Going for the baked potato vibe?" "Help me get this off," I gasped. "I'm dehydrating." Roderick, being Roderick, said he would help, but only if he could take a picture first. After he got his photo, which is definitely going to end up on the internet, he grabbed a pair of pliers and yanked on the zipper. Reep! The zipper didn't move. The fabric ripped. Reep! Now I have a leather jacket that is permanently fused to my body with a giant hole in the armpit. To make matters worse, Mom is sticking to this digital detox thing like glue. Last night, she made us play a board game called Chatterbox, where you pick a card and have to talk about your feelings. I drew a card that said, "Describe a time you felt trapped." I pointed to the jacket. "Right now. I am trapped right now." Mom said I wasn't taking the game seriously and docked me $5 allowance dollars. Tonight was even worse. Since I couldn't play video games and I couldn't move my arms freely because of the jacket, I decided to try and invent a game using Manny's toys. I set up a bowling alley in the hallway using Manny's plastic farm animals as pins. It was actually going quite well until Manny walked out of his room. He looked at the farm animals, he looked at me. "Ploopy!" he screamed. Manny told Mom I was hurting the cows.
Mom confiscated the farm animals, which meant I was back to staring at the wall. Thursday. I finally got the jacket off, but it came at a terrible price. I was in PE today. We were playing dodgeball, which is already my least favorite sport because the balls are always underinflated and smell like rubber cement. Mr. Underwood blew the whistle. I tried to dodge a ball thrown by Patty Farrell, who throws with the strength of an Olympic shot putter. I dove to the left, but the leather jacket was so stiff that instead of diving, I just sort of tipped over like a statue. Crack! The zipper finally gave way. The jacket exploded open. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that because I had been wearing the jacket for 3 days straight without washing it, a cloud of scent wafted out. It smelled like a locker room and a cheese factory had a baby. The entire gym stopped. Patty Farrell dropped her dodgeball. Even Mr. Underwood covered his nose. "Heffley," Mr. Underwood shouted through his sit, "go to the showers and burn that thing." I walked the walk of shame to the locker room. When I got home, I threw the jacket in the garbage bin outside. I walked inside, defeated. Mom was in the living room. The TV was on. She was watching her favorite gardening show. "Mom," I said, "what about the digital detox? What about the rotting hippocampus?" Mom didn't even look away from the screen. "Oh, that," she said. "I read a new article today. Apparently, short bursts of educational television are good for stress relief. Go play your video games, Greg. Just keep the volume down." So, let's recap. I ruined my reputation at school by smelling like a cheese factory. I lost $5 because I didn't want to talk about my feelings. I wore a leather oven for 3 days for absolutely no reason. I went upstairs and turned on my console. Raleigh was online. "Hey Greg," he messaged, "where's your cool jacket?" I blocked him.
Friday. I was looking forward to this weekend because Mom promised to take Roderick to his band practice, which meant I'd have the TV to myself for at least 3 hours. My plan was to finally beat the last level of Twisted Wizard: Rise of the Goblins. But of course, Dad had to ruin everything. Lately, Dad has been obsessed with this cable TV show called Man vs. Wild Chucks, where this guy gets dropped into the middle of nowhere with nothing but a pocket knife and a positive attitude, and he has to survive by eating grubs and sleeping inside hollow logs. Dad watched a marathon of it last night, and now he's convinced that our family has gone soft. He decided that I specifically am too dependent on modern conveniences like electricity and indoor plumbing. So instead of playing video games tomorrow, Dad says I have to learn a survival skill. He wants me to build a functional shelter in the backyard using only natural materials. I told Dad that the only natural materials in our yard are dead leaves and dog poop, but he said I wasn't approaching this with the right survivor mindset. He said, "Greg, when civilization collapses, you'll thank me." I figure if civilization collapses, the first thing I'm doing is looting the snack aisle at the grocery store, not building a hut out of twigs. I tried to get out of it by saying I had a lot of homework, but Dad checked my backpack and found nothing but an old banana peel. So now I'm stuck. Saturday. I woke up hoping Dad had forgotten about the whole survival thing, but no such luck. At 8 a.m., he banged on my door dressed head to toe in camouflage gear he must have dug out of the attic. He looked ridiculous. We live in the suburbs. The only thing he's going to blend in with is Mrs. Higgins' prize-winning hedge. We went out to the backyard, and Dad laid out the rules. No tools from the garage, only things we could scavenge. It took us about 2 hours just to find enough sturdy sticks to make the frame, mostly because Dad kept rejecting my sticks for lack of structural integrity. Roderick watched us from his bedroom window the whole time. Every time I dropped a log on my foot, he'd knock on the glass and give me a thumbs up. Eventually, we leaned a bunch of branches against the old oak tree. It didn't look like a shelter, it looked like a pile of yard waste waiting for pickup day. Dad was super proud though. He slapped the side of it and said, "Solid as a rock, Greg. This thing could withstand a hurricane."
Right as he said that, a squirrel jumped onto the roof of our shelter and the entire left side collapsed. We spent another hour fixing the collapse. Dad said the squirrel was a valuable lesson in unpredictability. By the time we were done, it was late afternoon. I started walking back toward the house to finally get some screen time, but Dad stopped me. "Where do you think you're going, soldier?" he asked. I told him I was going inside to consume modern conveniences. Dad shook his head. "The test isn't over. To truly prove you can survive, you have to spend the night in the structure." I thought he was joking. I really did. But he went into the house and came back out with 2 sleeping bags. This was a disaster waiting to happen. For one thing, the shelter wasn't exactly airtight. There were gaps everywhere. If it rained, we were going to get soaked. But the bigger problem arrived about 10 minutes later. Manny. Manny saw the pile of sticks and decided it was a new fort just for him. He crawled inside with his disgusting, crusty blanket, Tingy, and refused to come out. Dad tried to explain that this was serious survival business, not playtime, but Manny just kept saying, "Bubby's house," and throwing acorns at us. Eventually, Dad gave up and said Manny could stay for a little while, but he had to go inside for bedtime. So now I have to sleep outside on the hard ground next to Dad, who snores like a chainsaw, in a stick hut that smells faintly of Manny's old milk. Sunday. Worst night ever. We crawled into the sleeping bags around 10 p.m. It was freezing. Dad kept whispering things like, "Listen to the sounds of the wild," but the only thing I could hear was the highway traffic and Mr. Peterson 2 doors down yelling at his dog. I finally dozed off around midnight. Then, at 2:30 a.m., disaster struck. I woke up because I felt something wet hitting my face. I thought maybe it was starting to rain. It was worse. It was the automatic sprinkler system. Dad had forgotten to turn the timer off. Within seconds, the shelter wasn't sheltering anything. Water was blasting through the gaps in the sticks. It felt like we were being attacked by tiny, cold water cannons. Dad yelled, "Abort mission! Abort mission!" We scrambled out of our sleeping bags and ran for the back door, slipping on the wet grass the whole way. We ended up sleeping on the basement couches for the rest of the night because Mom wouldn't let us upstairs when we were covered in mud and wet leaves. Dad made me promise not to tell Roderick what happened. He said we need to maintain the illusion of ruggedness. I agreed, but it's going to be hard to keep it a secret since I'm pretty sure I saw a camera flash from Roderick's window right when the sprinklers hit us. If Man vs. Wild Chucks ever needs a new host, I don't think Dad is going to get the job.
Worried about is I'll turn out like